Old school gamers, what will the new gamers of today never experience? Having to decide what saves to delete because you can't afford a new memory card. Oh lord, I still remember when memory cards first became a thing and I had no idea about them. I'd rented a PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy VII, and Resident Evil 2. Cut to me realizing my predicament and playing Resident Evil 2 all the way through to the alligator before dying. My god, that was awful. Remember in fighting games how unlocking characters was usually fun and unorthodox with different tasks you had to do to unlock them? You don't see that as much today. Having no idea what you're supposed to do next in a game. There were moments in old games where you just ran around for ages trying to figure out if you had missed something or if it was a bug. Now you just Google or YouTube it. Not to mention there are many in-game guides to doing things such as quest markers. Going back to every town and talking to every NPC hoping to jumpstart the story again was real back in the day. Putting the goddamn disc in and playing the game immediately after. Even better, plugging the cartridge in and playing even more immediately after. Actually, one company never left this system. Nintendo's always had at least one cartridge system active on the market since the NES. The awe and astonishment of the huge leaps in graphics. I still remember talking with my friends at school about how Final Fantasy X was basically indistinguishable from real life. I remember watching the first Halo trailer on the GameStar CD and I was just blown away. Could graphics ever get better than that? Going to the Scholastic Book Fair and buying a cheat code book or a strategy guide. Networking with my friends on how to get through challenging areas instead of looking it up on YouTube. 100% of my childhood friendships were forged around trading video game tips and sharing Nintendo Power Maps. I remember a kid in elementary school wanted me to pay him for directions on how to get some item in Super Mario RPG. I wouldn't pay him, but his little brother told me for free later that day, so all was well. LAN parties, man. I'm not going too far back, but LAN parties were a huge part of the scene back in the early noughties. In my city, they're basically dead now. Sitting in the back seat, poring over the game manual for the game you just bought as your parents drive you home from the store. You only did that in the back seat? The narrator basically just read all of his game manuals whenever his parents booted him off the computer. Those thick Blizzard ones with all the lore and unit descriptions honestly got some reading time even when the PC was fully available. Old school manuals really effed, man. I miss being that excited about a game book. A crowd of people standing around a new fighting game at the arcade with a line of quarters on the screen serving as the queue for challenges. Winner stays. Honestly, arcade games in general. I remember playing the old Gauntlet Dark Legacy game, a game which certainly devoured quarters, but at a mostly fair rate. My brother actually went to the local arcade and played so frequently that he eventually beat the game, which gave you a code to send in for the chance to win a t-shirt that said, "I crushed Garm," the game's final boss. I don't think I've ever really seen anything like that in the modern era of video games. Arcade gaming was great, like that desperation of being down to your last couple of quarters and patrolling the arcade to get the best gaming experience, to round out your day before you ran out of cash. Blowing on the cartridge to fix it. Yeah, and blowing on it wasn't even what fixed it. Taking the game out and putting it back in was. In-person multiplayer. No need to buy 4 copies of a system and a game in order to play with friends. I thought it was going to make a comeback with 3D TVs. MotorStorm on PlayStation 3 allowed 2 players to play together, but each got the entire screen. Instead of having 3D glasses with left eye and right eye lens, you'd get 2 sets of glasses. One would have 2 left eye lenses and the other would have 2 right eye lenses. It allowed 2 images to display on screen at once, but the pair of glasses you were wearing would dictate who saw what. Mapping out dungeons by hand on graph paper and using a spiral notebook as a do-it-yourself quest journal. Dialing into a BBS to play BRE and ISA versus people that live in another state. Lugging your PC to your friend's house and gaming via a null modem cable. Copy protection code wheels. Switching to channel 2, I believe it was, in order to play games. Screwing the adapter onto the back of the TV to be able to screw in the coax cable from the NES. Saving your game at the worst time and having to start the whole frickin' thing over. When you put quick save and quick load next to each other on the keyboard and press the wrong one as you're falling into a pit of radioactive goo in Half-Life. Genuine surprises and mysteries. Obviously, there's occasionally one that comes through like GTA or weird unfound Dark Souls stuff, but most everything has its code decompiled and secret assets located eventually. I'm thinking particularly of the hunt for the Triforce in Ocarina of Time. There was some Brazilian girl who was sending what turned out to be fake screenshots of supposedly finding the Triforce. Big long hullabaloo turned out to be fake, but it sucked up so many hours of my young life trying to replicate. The golden age of MMOs, especially MMOs. Back in the noughties, they felt like role-playing games in a world full of other players. Take World of Warcraft as an example. No microtransactions, no easy ways to success, everything had to be worked for in that game, and the satisfaction you got from achieving something was insane. You actively reached out to other players in the community because playing alone in World of Warcraft up until Cataclysm was absolutely impossible. You had your go-to people you'd hit up for dungeons or group quests. Yes, those once existed. Elite mobs, anyone? Or even raids. Nowadays, you just queue up for everything with a single click, which isn't necessarily bad. It's a great quality of life thing, but it effectively killed the world in World of Warcraft. You can sit in a town and just do most stuff from there without stepping outside of it. A lot of MMOs sacrificed the community feel and world for quality of life and accessibility. But that's the case for most games nowadays. Quick rewards everywhere to satisfy the player base and keep them playing. Well, data mining and immediate access to information also contributed heavily to the decline. So much in EverQuest and early World of Warcraft was unknown that made the experience genuinely thrilling. Nowadays, everything's out there already, and people in the beta branch just post sims of the new top-performing specs. That's one thing I do miss. You'd be geared up as humanely possible before a raid dungeon, and it would be months before anyone managed to figure out how to kill that boss. Even with a non-MMO such as Diablo 3, I remember it taking a few months of nerfs before most people completed Inferno difficulty. Big box PC games. They were a little bit larger than a ream of printer paper, but there was so much room for artwork showcasing the game outside and inside the box, not to mention a thick manual or two and extra artwork that came inside. I think it was a holdover from when software shipped on floppy disks. Over time, more games came out on optical disks, which meant that there was more than enough space to store a digital online manual. As a consequence, boxes shrank, and those full physical manuals became booklets, which later became instruction cards. Now, even those are being phased out in favor of digital downloads. Oh man, the narrator misses those big chunky box boys so much. These days, every now and again you see collector's editions, but not really so much for PC games. I miss having big books and prima strategy guides included in some of those. It was truly the most exciting thing a teen could waste their awful service job money on. We are losing local couch co-op more and more with new games. Oddly enough, there are lots of small-budget local co-op games on PC these days. I don't know anyone to play them with, though. Everyone's too busy with stupid stuff like raising their kids or working overtime. Playground rumors. I barely experienced this since I was born in '96, so Google was around and popular for most of my gaming childhood. But there was a time where a friend would tell you something like, "I heard that if you use strength on the truck, you can catch a Mew," or "I heard there's a way to get a glitch Pokemon that lets you get infinite Master Balls," and you had no easy way to verify that except to try it yourself. Now, if someone says, "I heard that there's actually a fourth Pikachu evolution after Raichu," you can just Google it and data miners have already conclusively proven if it's true or false. Having to write down the code to skip to that level because I couldn't save the game. Changing the channel to channel 3, or video. I still love the Hideo joke during the Psycho Mantis fight. You losing your game because someone answered the house phone. PvP games are just meant to be fun. Everything has to be an esport these days, and that attracts the super toxic crowd of hardcore gamers or whatever. Not sure if this is true, but as someone who mostly plays competitive online games, overcoming imbalances. I used to play Star Wars Brood War a bunch, and it received very little if any balance patches over the years. Balance patches really weren't so much of a thing. So instead of the main attitude being, X is overpowered, wait until it's nerfed, the main attitude seemed to be, how do we beat it anyway? And it generally seemed to work out. Now, every time someone gets destroyed by something, there's a yell of imbalance, and that's where it ends. No try to beat it, no further thought. Game's imbalanced, that's it. The lives system. You lose them all? Start over, motherfricker. Non-backlit Game Boy screens. That panic when the sun starts setting just as you were about to start a boss battle with Lieutenant Surge, and also the painstakingly slow progress as you wait to pass street lamps and hold your Game Boy up to the window to see what you're doing. Putting AA batteries in the freezer just to get a few more minutes on Tetris. Getting a new game, specifically at Toys R Us. Back in the day, you pulled a slip from the game area and paid for that. Then after you paid, you brought the slip to another counter, where they gave you the game. It was such a ritual. Also, spending 2 hours arguing with your brother at Blockbuster about what video game to rent. An almost toxicity-free community. I don't remember the last online game with a player base that wasn't filled with spoiled children. Games are amazing now. When we were kids, we'd crap our pants playing just about anything that's out for current consoles or PC. Yet, the modern gaming community is negative and toxic about 95% of all games that come out. Basically, if it's not a Zelda game or the current indie side-scroller, be prepared to read negative reviews. I mean, not for nothing, but the Bloodborne Reddit is the kindest, most helpful community of juntas ever. You can't swing a dead Yarnamite without hitting someone who's offering to log in to help someone with a boss. Even if you don't like the game or haven't played, go lurk and see. We're all the kindest, blood-drunk monster juntas around. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The single-player golden age. It's all player versus player or socially driven group PvE games like Destiny and The Division. The age before 20 DLC packs and in-game microtransactions were the norm, and an expansion pack was something you got at the store and pretty much doubled the game content with. Text only. Game Genie. How has this not been mentioned yet? It's preloaded with cheats and game alterations, you plug your game into it, then plug it into the console. When the game goes to boot, the Game Genie menu comes up first and you can give yourself any number of cheats. Infinite lives, max hearts, level skips, stuff like that. An entire day of split screening with your friends, pizza included. Your file is corrupted. Format memory card? Your couch is broken. Burn your house down? Game guides used to be written on slices of dead tree instead of a wiki. Those grid-based passwords from Mega Man. Installing the original World of Warcraft and hoping you got lucky and the installation would be complete before bedtime. Tomorrow. Editing config sys and autoexec bat files in order to get the correct values for extended memory and expanded memory so your game would even load. I came here to complain about this. There were some games I never even got to run despite fiddling with config files for hours. I haven't played Sonic 3 in a while, let's pop that bad boy in. Insert card into system for the first time in 8 years. Sega. And no fricking updates! I can do you one better than this example. In 2015, my friend and I randomly started reminiscing about Star Wars Rogue Squadron. He then proceeds to dig out his Nintendo 64 from his closet, dusts it off, and we get to zooming around blasting TIE fighters 17 frickin' years after the release of the game, and it starts instantly, working perfectly. I love some of our modern gaming innovations, and they'd be impossible without internet connections and patches, but that experience made me a little bitter about updating consoles these days. Did you know there was a sequel to that old alien creation game Spore called Darkspore? It was basically Spore but a dungeon crawler, straight up Diablo. Did you know the maps for Need for Speed Carbon and Need for Speed Most Wanted were actually combined once in Need for Speed World? The game had full day and night cycles, making it the only way to experience Carbon at daylight or Most Wanted at night. Did you know Fear once had a strictly multiplayer game, Fear Online, which was released after the third Fear game but used the Fear 2 engine? People said it was horrendous, but if you're like me, just trying to make another Fear game on a classic engine no less after the mess that was Fear 3R is a very large leap in the right direction. Do any of these games sound fun or interesting to you? Something you might consider playing or at least checking out for a couple of minutes? Well, F you can't. They're frickin' dead. I don't mean dead in that nobody plays them anymore, I mean dead as in nobody can play them anymore. Every single one of these games required you to connect to a central online publisher-run server, and now that publisher shut down the server, you can't even load past the main menu. None of you will ever know what it's like to play these games, and too frickin' bad. It doesn't stop there. Battleforge, Hawken, Ghost in the Shell, FIFA 14, Madden 13, Battlefield 2 multiplayer, and many more. But that's just off the top of my head for now. Every single one of these games is dead permanently. You want to start up a match on a private server with some old buddies and relive your glory days? F you can't. Why is this okay? Most of these were full-priced $60 games when they came out. They weren't small nothings, not tiny mobile games that offer little to the world of gaming, and are meant to be disposable anyway. I will bet anyone real-world money that a good amount of parents brought FIFA 14, For their kid, expecting to be able to have some good clean fun with their kid for years, and now that the server is down, the parent can go F themselves. There's no excuse for this bullcrap games as a service model, if you even want to try to defend it by calling it that. Because when you're holding a literal hard copy of the game on the disk, you're holding every single piece of data you need for the game, except for the license to play it part. Now, sure, publishers have a bottom line, they can't keep a central server running forever. That would be an acceptable excuse for killing games if there was no other option, which there fricking is. How many games can you name where you can host a private server for everyone to play on, no central authentication required? Off the top of my head, I can think of DayZ and Minecraft, to name a few big-ticket games. It doesn't matter if it's 500 years from now. If people still own copies of Minecraft and the requisite hardware, they'll be able to pop that stuff in and play online. Meanwhile, most of you will never be able to experience Spore's sequel, which is a single-player game no less, because some publisher couldn't give two craps about patching the game or even releasing the source code so the game's fans could patch it in, and they decided killing their IP was their best option. No gambling. I don't remember any game that had those luck-spinning machines with real-life money. Also, the only time you'd be paying money is when you bought the game, some kind of membership or in some games, currency. Also, internet bills. Getting games in cereal boxes. Actual games. Does anyone remember the series released by Disney when Treasure Planet was coming out? I still have the Asteroid game somewhere. So you have this epic game that you're so excited about and you're getting into it. You've got a real good feel for the stuff. But you're 2 hours into the storyline and you have to stop progress so you can load another disc. It really takes away from the in-the-moment feel that we all take for granted nowadays. For example, imagine playing Geralt in The Witcher. You're jazzed, pumped up, and on the move to tackle a huge storyline. You walk up to the building you're supposed to enter for an encounter, but the screen times out and goes black, then grey, then a DOS screen. You listen to your computer hum, chirp, and crackle, then have to wait 2 or 3 minutes for a load screen. Load screen finally shows up, and then it tells you, insert disk 2. So you eject the disk, maybe your computer has trouble with that, maybe not, and you insert disk 2. The computer loads, and then it thinks, and thinks, and thinks so hard, then the machine makes a loud jerking noise, then quiet. To continue, press enter, and frustratingly you make your way back to your scenario. For maybe 10 minutes you've been removed from the game. You work another hour into the storyline and then you get another pause. Insert disk 3. Oh boy. So the narrator has looked at how much space The Witcher 3 takes up on his hard drive, and I think it would be about, let's see, 85 or so optical CD-ROMs to put all the game files on? Or maybe 11 or 12 DVD-ROMs. But that's an apple to oranges comparison, I guess, since none of those discs have enough space to even run the game engine in the first place. You just wouldn't release The Witcher 3 back then. Going to the shop to buy your games. Getting that game you really wanted and it comes in a big box with fancy graphics, and maybe if it was a big game, there'd be more than one install CD. Wow. Seriously though, I bought RimWorld the other day and I thought, dang, wish I could have this in the proper cardboard game box. It just looks like such a hard copy cover design for a box. Buying a new game and getting a full game, not some of it with the rest paywalled. The Nintendo Hotline. In 4th grade, I was playing Final Fantasy VII, and I'd pilfered the method for breeding a gold chocobo from somewhere and handwritten it down in 4th grade chicken scratch hieroglyphs. Much to my dismay, I never came out with a gold chocobo. So I'm at school one day and Tim, I didn't even like Tim, he was pretty snot-nosed, he was babbling about how his older brother can get a gold chocobo 100% of the time. Curious, I thought to myself. How could anybody have the knowledge, skill, and patience to do such a thing? I needed to know more, so I picked Tim's brain a little bit, and it was clear he didn't know any more than I did. So I asked if I could come and spend the night at his house. I spent the night at Tim's house, who I didn't like, so I could have his brother show me how to breed a gold chocobo. Nowadays, I'd just YouTube and be done with it. Play by mail, when lag was a few days delay due to a snowstorm. World of Warcraft's game launcher. Also, Curse client. Loading a game on the Spectrum ZX using a cassette tape. Blasting away at Defender with a crowd of fellow teens gathered around you at the arcade as you raked up impossible scores. The boys whisper, the girls swoon, your focus is at 300%. You can't screw up now. The game is throwing everything at you. You dodge this way, that way, putting your entire body into it. The crowd gets bigger and bigger as newcomers realize something historic and epic is happening on that corner. They don't know who you are. They just know that you're a sorcerer, a Valkyrie, a digital warrior, the walking dude, the Punisher, the Saint, the Equalizer, Darth Mother frickin' Vader for Pete's sake. Where did you come from? Are you even human? For 10 minutes, you're a real-life hero. When you pay $60 for a game, it comes in a nice case and has a user manual like a school textbook, a poster-sized map of the game world for you to tack up on your wall, and now you pay $60 for half a game and you don't even really own it. Having to jot down passcodes to continue in games like Metroid or Kid Icarus because no save files. For things like Metroid and maybe the original Legend of Zelda specifically, having to scribble down crude maps of every area on paper so you don't get lost every 44 seconds. Good old CRT monitors. That thing in 2D fighter games where you walk off one side of the screen and appear on the other. Being stuck on a level or mission for days, internet access has made playthroughs incredibly easy. Burning their eyes playing arcade machines that work with coins, plus needing the skills to avoid paying for a credit and 3 extra lives. Having multiple autoexact.bat and config.sys setups, each tailored to a specific game. Video games at Blockbuster Video. The epiphany of up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start. Funkoland. Dying of dysentery along the trail. How to beat a game like Morrowind without an internet guide. You can't sell a sense of pride and accomplishment like that.
Men of Reddit who proposed and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? My mother told my father no 3 times. On the 3rd time, he got wasted at the local bar and basically started pouring his heart out to anyone who would listen. Mind you, it's a very small village in the Italian Alps, and my father barely spoke Italian, and no one in the village spoke English, including my mother. Word got back to my mother about this sad American at the bar, so she went to find him and she told him that she'd marry him. My parents celebrated their 44th anniversary last month. Bro, it's women like this that give hope to the annoying, desperate male characters that want girlfriends in most anime. She was an art major and I had just joined the army. We had been lovers since high school. I asked and she said no. She wanted to get her master's. We were friends for a while, but we don't talk anymore. She works as a bartender now, I think. I ended up getting married to my best friend. We've been married for more than a decade and we have a 5-year-old son. Oh, I have a story about this. My friend had been with his girlfriend for years, so he decided he wanted to propose. What he didn't know is that she was also thinking about proposing to him. He proposed first and she freaked out because she had already set up her proposal and bought a ring, so she said no. Over the next week, she freaked out more and more and refused to answer his calls or messages. My friend then decided to use the money he had saved up to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned out to be a year-long trip around the world. One day he says that he's coming back and she decides to go and wait for him at the airport and propose there. It turns out that while being in Peru, he met a girl and they fell in love almost immediately, and he got married in Peru. Cue 5 years later, he and his Peruvian wife are still very happily married and recently had a baby, while his ex still hasn't quite forgiven herself for ruining her relationship with him. At first, I thought this was going to be the typical one proposed and the other takes out their ring and makes it a double proposal, but this definitely had a turn that I wasn't expecting. I mean, how dumb can you be to let someone you wanted to marry leave the country for 3 months and let it turn into a year? Pretty idiotic if you ask me. My mom actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger, not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mom plucked up the courage and asked him. Just to get back at her after all of those years, he said no, before taking up her offer a few days later. He died a happy man. For a bit more of context on this, it was actually 2 declined proposals, not just 1, both pre-children too, so let's say I'm lucky. Also, when they did get married, it wasn't purely an action for the estate or whatever, they already had their wills sorted out. It was just one of those last great days as a family type things. In fact, my sister and I were the only 2 present at the registry office. And when I say office, they literally squeezed us into one of the registry offices as there was a big waiting list for weddings, and we didn't know how long he had. He died 3 months later, so we were all hugely grateful for them helping us out with this. As a woman who got engaged and the proposal was later revoked, it still stings a little 11 years later. When you are so sure you're with the love of your life, losing them can really pop a hole into your life plans. We met in her home country of Germany while I was traveling. I knew I was in love. We dated long distance for a while. Me flying to Europe, her flying to the US. I suggested marriage so we could be together. She said no a few times. I didn't press, but I was patient and not being pushy. I knew she was worth the wait. Then it hit her that's how we could be together. If we got married, we could live in a country together. That was a difficulty of being born on different patches of dirt. A few years later, I'm still married to my best friend and living with her in Germany. Not all no's stay no. Life goes on. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married and have 3 children, and we are both still very much in love. I find it crazy that relationships still continue after a proposal rejection. Because on one hand, it feels like the rejection is saying, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I guess on the other hand, the person might just be against the idea of marriage. Which is fair, because you don't want to marry someone who is against the idea of marriage. I mean, look at Will Smith and his entanglement. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic, and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did just that. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker, and they've been married for 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he would have never gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life, but it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no. And over time, we grew apart. I haven't talked to her in 15 years. I don't know if she died. I knew a couple who did just that. He proposed in order to give her citizenship and health insurance, so she could remain here and get cancer treatment she desperately needed. They stayed married for about 15 years and he even adopted her son, but they never lived together or were romantically involved. Years later, they divorced when he met the woman of his dreams and wanted to get married. They were all very close friends, with no drama. She lived and is a university professor now. He's in another state with the woman of his dreams. Phoebe Buffay, is that you? So this actor, Patrick Moot, proposed to his girlfriend at a basketball game and gets turned down while on a giant jumbotron. Clip goes viral on YouTube, Facebook, etc. She tells him later that she turned him down because she thinks his pee-pee is too small. So he travels around the world documenting what other cultures think about pee-pee size, pee-pee enlargement, and made a movie about it called Unhung Hero. I've never watched it, but the title alone makes me laugh. I've never heard of this film before, but I do agree. I think it's a great title, and I'm interested in watching it now. This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no several times. One day, my dad asked my mom to marry him yet again, and she said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later, he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and they had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said, I don't know. A couple of months later I asked again. She said, maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out that she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there, really. Damn, dude, I'm sorry about your friends, genuine crap bags of people, to knowingly sleep with your girl. I hope you find better friends. Dude, that would literally break me. Like, cheating is crappy if it's a coworker or someone you don't trust. It's 1,000 times better than going to vent to your friend about your girl cheating, and he's like, yeah, I'm the other guy. It happened to a friend of mine, and honestly, I think it did break him. His girlfriend slept with his oldest friend. This was a couple of years ago. I remained friends with the guy for a while afterwards, and his personality within the relationship just seemed to, for a lack of a better word, crumpled. She continued to sleep with other guys and manipulated him into blaming himself for the unfaithfulness. I think most people would agree that cheaters belong in the trash, set on fire, and then thrown off a cliff. FYI, that was just a figure of speech, don't take it literally. We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment, we were stressed, both of us with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent enough in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated the letter badly, telling us that even with presenting the documents, they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked, looking for some more help. We ended up at City Hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice. "If we got married, could we stop the deportation?" is what I said to the poor guy in the information office. I can't remember if he gave us an answer. I want to marry her. Will you marry me?" She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, "Well, thank you, but let's wait a bit." After the weekend, we went to the immigration office and the people there explained which documents were missing and how to get them. She wasn't denied the visa and we kept living in the same way as we planned. It was intense and, in retrospect, pretty funny. My mom and dad were not married but wanted a kid and had me. My dad, being a Catholic and Hispanic, decided he wanted to be married to my mom and proposed. She said no because she hadn't been divorced from her first husband for very long and now had 3 kids and preferred to stay unmarried. He threatened to leave her and got on his motorcycle and started to drive away until my mom chased him down and gave in, leading to what my parents call the voodoo wedding the same day. I'm gonna need more details about this voodoo wedding if you have them. From my understanding, the way it went down was they immediately flipped through a phone book looking for someone who could marry them for free the same day. They eventually came across a small mom and pop store / restaurant in a bad part of town called The Cut that agreed to do it in a back room using their waitstaff as the witnesses. It was a quick 5-minute ceremony that ended with the officiant making them eat a meal with them. To their dismay, they were charged for all of it and had to run home and break open the quarter jar. Okay, look, I get men can be very dramatic at times and act this way when getting rejected, but my guys, we really need to sit back and reevaluate how we handle rejection. Getting someone to marry you out of pure pity is not the strat. I was a young Marine and I was only home during the weekends. I was dating this girl for about a year from my hometown. When I asked, she said yes. Her dad, who was former Navy, kept saying that we should wait. We put it off for a bit longer. Fast forward another year, she dumped me. Father informs me that she had been sleeping with a lot of guys, like more than 50 over the last 2 years that we dated, and was very happy I didn't marry her, and he apologized for her bad behavior. She then totally ghosted everyone in her family for about 6 months. Find out she moved 7 hours away and was living under a house, and I don't mean in a basement. Literally under a house with a new BF. She calls her mom to come get her. The mother and father asked me if I could go get her and bring her home. Good times, good times. That would have been a big hell nah from me, my guys. I asked her right out of high school and she said she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together. Got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. In 2017, Google came up with this idea to allow you to make photo books out of your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years, and I knew that she was the one that I wanted to marry. So I created this wonderful photo book of all the selfies of us together, and ended it with a page made out of photos I generated that say, "Will you marry me?" I then proceeded to put all of these into an album and build the photo book. What didn't occur to me at the time was that the album I put these in was a shared album, and other people get notifications when you add new photos to it. And the other person that this album was shared with? My girlfriend. That evening, we had dinner and it all came out. She saw the photo and she wasn't ready. There were a few reasons why, and they were good reasons and smart reasons, mostly to do with timing, family, and finances. We weren't breaking up, we just weren't getting engaged at that time. A year later, we had successfully discussed the concept of getting married. We went ring shopping, she picked out her own ring, and by the time I actually did propose, we both knew what the answer would be. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked out so far, and the photo book is on my shelf to my left as we speak. I'm a firm believer that the only surprise in a proposal should be how you're proposing, not that you are. She or he should know that it's going to happen at some point, but not how. Marriage is a big deal and should be discussed extensively beforehand as it is a huge legal agreement. I'm glad it ended up working out for you. The photo book idea was really sweet. My mom told my dad no when he proposed to her, even though they were already living together. She thought he was impotent, and it wasn't until she got pregnant that she said yes. In retrospect, I wish my parents would have decided earlier in their relationship that they could barely stand each other. That's a big oof. for the OP, but money and kids have to be the two biggest reasons people don't get together, right? I spoke to her about it beforehand, and she seemed really keen on the idea, so I decided to propose about a week after in front of all of her friends. She was so shocked she picked me up off my knee and shooed me away. Most of her friends were confused because everyone knew what was going to happen, and she said that she was excited for it. I didn't know what to do. It was all really embarrassing, and later on she explained that she didn't mean no, she just didn't know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and just this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary. Not my story, but someone I'm friends with. They both had crappy homes and became a couple at 14. Somewhere around 20, he proposed to her. She said that she wasn't ready to commit yet. After that, he proposed every year partially in hopes that she would be ready, but it was also kind of a ritual where he would just show her that he's still serious. She would say no every time. In their late 20s, he was done with his studies. She could see the finish line, so she told him that she's ready, meaning marriage and eventually children. That's when he got second thoughts about marrying the only woman he had ever had a relationship with, and he wasn't sure if he was making a mistake. They went on a break. She went to the US from Europe to do her PhD at MIT. They eventually drifted apart more. She moved on and found a new long-term relationship with a partner that's a lot better for her, while he quickly regretted ending the relationship and started hooking up with whoever he could find on Tinder without being able to form a meaningful relationship after. That's what a lot of people would call fumbling the bag. My mom rejected my dad the first 2 times. There was no real hard feelings between them. I guess my mother just wasn't ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and my mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice shouting, "Honey, the dog is asking to marry me!" Cue absolute hysterics. My dad said yes to the proposal. My human dad and my human mom are still married 2 years later. We'd been dating for a year and a half, and I was due to move out on orders. Was in the army. She suggested we get married. I said, no way. I'm going off to school, army type, for 6 months and then a year on deployment to the Middle East. It just wouldn't work. She was calm and then said, "You think I'll be a burden to all of that, but I'll actually be a help." Well, just seconds earlier, all I could think of was what a pain in the butt it would be to get married and leave, and now, for whatever reason, it seemed perfectly reasonable that she was right. We got married a week later at the courthouse. I was 22. Last month, we had a really nice social distance dinner party for our 29th anniversary with our 2 amazing kids and a few friends. For non-military people listening to this, could you marry someone in the military? Personally, I don't think I could, but that's probably because I've come across too many people that have been in the military that are unfaithful. She said yes, as I had a special occasion planned, one of those observation wheels, and I proposed at the very top, and we were on our way to a family event, and I had the ring made and everything. Then a few days later, she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while, but it was long distance, other side of the world. When I visited, it would be super awkward. Eventually, her dad kicked me out. I was flying standby and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. Now I am happily married and I'm glad it never worked out. I wasn't in a good place when I had met her and her family was super controlling. It would have never worked. The woman I married is super cool and is my best friend. Turned out better than I expected. We were dating for a little over a year, but I was so sure she was the one. I drove 2 hours to see her at college and went on a beautiful winter night walk and proposed. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "Oh, you thought this was serious? Well, I don't know how to say this other than that I've been seeing other people. Well, actually, I have been seeing other women." I was stunned. I got up, put the ring in my pocket, and walked to my car. Got in and drove away, never looking back and crying the whole time. Haven't seen or spoken with her in 7 years, even though she's tried countless times to reach out. Now it's a story I tell my friends who are nervous about asking their significant others to marry them, reminding them that even if they say no, it could be worse. Well, about 2 years later, I met my wife of 22 years. We are happily married. The one that said no got married for the first time last year and seems happy. My wife is way into me in ways that the former girlfriend was never, and I see that my life is far more happier with my wife than the one that said no. She's not a bad person. I was just young and in love with someone that wasn't in love with me. It worked out for the best. I'm glad she said no. Not sure if this counts, but I did propose. She said yes, but 1 month before the wedding, she took it back. This is what happened immediately with my life. I personally lost $3,000 worth of deposits. My parents and her parents lost about $4,000 each on deposits. Me and my parents are working class, so it took us years for us to financially recover from this. I spent about $2,200 on the ring I didn't want. That was my biggest regret, and I will say that to anyone who listens. The engagement ring chain I bought it from wouldn't take it back. I took it to pawn shops and they'd only offer a few hundred. This engagement ring store banked on customers who wanted the whole ring. Stone, band, setting. If you're going to buy a ring, just buy the stone. For the gold band setting, you can get that at a local jewelry store. Apparently my gem that I bought was crap. Most of the cost of the ring was BS. Most of my family was from out of state, and a lot of them were pissed because they had to cancel their flights. I had to go to the ER because I didn't leave my room. I couldn't take any calls because everyone was so pissed and I didn't want to hear it. I was depressed and just stayed in bed. One day, my roommates grabbed me and took me to the ER where the doctor treated me for severe dehydration and an infection. What happened when I got over it? I became stronger for it. I didn't propose to anyone until a decade later. Honestly, there wasn't anyone that I loved deeply enough to be committed in a relationship. But when I proposed, I was in my 30s. Our relationship was more mature than the first time I proposed. We've now been married for 13 years. She's my best friend. When I have good news, she's the first person I want to tell. And when I have bad news, she's the first person I want to tell. I also financially recovered as well. I learned my lesson about the engagement ring. Only paid $300 for it. She loved it and treasures it. After our 10-year milestone, we were doing so well, I took her to pick out a new wedding ring at any cost. She refused, and she still wears the cheap $300 ring and loves it. Redditors, what is your "did I freaking stutter" moment? Vehicle inspector here. Sir, your back taillight is broken. You need to get that fixed and come back. I'm friends with the owner here, and you're telling me that my car has problems? I already have, and if you aren't prepared in the future, don't waste my time. My friend has a shop and does vehicle inspections too. At least once a month he hears, "But some other shop gave me a sticker." And his response is always, "How nice for you. Take it to their shop then." When I finally kicked my ex out of my life, she tried to argue us back into being together. As I drove her to the airport, and even had the balls to critique my arguing techniques as inconducive to resolving a fight. I cut her off and said, "What part of this are you not getting? We're way past that. This is not a fight that I need to work through with you. I'm taking you to the airport and I never want to see or hear from you again." Dude, I feel your pain. Went through almost the exact same crap with my last ex. My ex openly admitted to getting me mad on purpose because she found enjoyment in it. Screw all crazy exes. Found out my supposed best friend, who I was letting live on my couch, was sleeping with my girlfriend who was also living with me. I work in IT, so I work crazy long hours, but we had a massive power outage one day and my boss said to go home for the day. So I left 5 hours early. Caught them both red-handed. Kicked them both out at once, which was ideal because I got 2 birds with 1 stone. They both apologized profusely and asked me, even though they made a mistake, why would I kick them out on the streets in an area where they can't afford to live? Silicon Valley. I laughed my butt off and said, "I guess that's something you two should have figured out during pillow talk, huh?" And I slammed the door as hard as I could right in their faces. Needless to say, it wrecked me for a while because I loved that girl. But looking back on it, I think it's the only moment in my life where I proudly have stood up for my morals and values and not taken any crap or continued letting people walk all over me. And that crap is priceless. God damn, dude. Props to you for being such a savage and an overall Chad. Hope everything worked out. My mom came to my new place, and out of reflex, she called me a lady of the night like she did when I was living with her as a teenager. I told her to get out. There was this amazing moment when she was completely disoriented by my reaction. It didn't compute, so I had to tell her again. "It's time for you to go, please leave." It was one of the most important moments in my life. I'm amazed you were nice enough to let her show up in the first place for treating you that badly. Good on you for immediately sending her out. Thanks, she was there because I want to stay on good terms with my dad. He is the reason I'm anywhere near her. Sending her out was very empowering and very sad. It was amazing to finally have the power to stand up to her, but really sad that this is what I have to put up with from my own mother. Ever since then, she has made an effort not to insult me in front of my face. So there's been some progress. Horrible situation. My mom was an alcoholic who was paying for all of her boyfriend's nursing home expenses and then paid all of his family's expenses like car payments, big purchases like appliances, or home remodel payments. My mom's addiction caused her health to plummet. She needs to be in nursing care. Her BF dies and his family never contacts her unless it's to complain about the money they need. I take over her finances and cut off all of those freaking sugar mama payments. If they had stayed in regular contact or regularly visited her, sure, I would have considered it. But no, they just wanted her to cover their payments. I cut off the entire family. My mother had a lot of money. One of the jerk's BF's sister calls to tell me that they're going to report me to Adult Protective Services. I say, go ahead. I have nothing to hide and you guys are the jerks. They were flabbergasted that I said, did I freaking stutter? They tried to report me, but all that happened was Adult Protective Services reached out to see if I needed any help transitioning my mom to the nursing care. They stopped talking to my mom after that. She died never hearing from them again. I was the one holding her hand during the last few days of her life. They didn't come to her funeral or to the memorial her students held for her after that. If I'm being honest, I think this OP was pretty soft on these people. Maybe this was their first time having to talk to horrible people, because I would have tombstoned these people to hell. When I quit my last job due to a promotion, I let my current boss know that I accepted the promotion and gave him 3 weeks notice, and that my last job was going to be March 31st. He proceeded to tell me that he would discuss a time when he would allow me to leave, and I wasn't allowed to leave until he said so. I very firmly repeated myself that March 31st would be my last day, and that was non-negotiable. He was the worst person I had ever worked with in my entire career. Slavery is illegal, yes? I called HR and they confirmed that he had no control to make me stay longer, and that I was free to move to my new position. On top of that, they said I was generous for giving 3 weeks notice instead of 2. They coached me on what I should do if the situation continued to persist, and offered backup to talk to him if it kept happening. He was talked to by HR. I was terrorized for the last 3 weeks I was there, as he tried to get me to quit so I couldn't move to that promotion. I contacted HR again and chose not to hand over the 6+ months of records I wrote down of his inappropriate behavior at the time, because I was leaving that position and it could affect my new promotion. I chose to only submit my documentation to support the person after me if they also had trouble, to support firing him. I also had to go to the doctor due to the stress and anxiety levels. I was given prescription medication for migraines so I could make it through the last 3 weeks. I didn't have a single migraine after I left that job. No promotion would have kept me from burning down a terrible boss. Sometimes people just need to be knocked down a peg. Had a door-to-door salesman ring the doorbell. I was nice, opened the door, and stepped outside onto the step. Dogs were going bananas. I let him tell me everything he was selling and then politely told him that I wasn't interested. Went to open the screen door to go back in and he puts his arm out to stop it from opening. I have a resting jerk face normally, so I guess the look on my face was enough, but I was instantly livid with him. Had a dude try this while selling bullcrap books and reached out towards my kid, pointing, not grabbing, and says that I should be concerned for his education. This was after my 3rd refusal. It then turned into me saying, "Get off my freaking porch," and picking up a stick. I was enraged. Dude was trying to convince me that I really needed this overly expensive dictionary CD-ROM thingy. I told him, after much talk, that I literally don't, because I have a few paper dictionaries and internet access. He then screamed, "Well, it's not like you know what's best for you anyways." And he started trying to convince my mom. I took my mom's hand and left. I was 17 at the time. I worked in a gas station and 2 guys walked in and kept looking where all the workers were. I kept an eye on them because they looked shady. Then I see one of the guys put a pack of sausages in his pocket and then come over to the till to buy a Red Bull. I made my coworker, who was my sister, move so I could serve them. And then I scanned the Red Bull and said in the most casual way I could, with my heart nearly ripping out of my chest, I'm not a confrontational person, "Do you want to pay for the sausages you put in your pocket too?" And the look on this guy's face was priceless. I had to repeat myself and he just mumbles, "I'm sorry," and paid for the sausages. After they left, my coworker lost it, said how taken aback she was because she thought I was being rude to the customer before she realized what was happening. She ended up telling the manager about it, and I got a good old pat on the back and a sincere thanks. Doesn't sound like much, but it felt freaking awesome. Dude, I will say when you confront thieves and win, it does feel awesome. I stopped a group of TV thieves when I worked at a big warehouse store. I saw through all their little plans and set up my team to catch them before getting what they want. I'll have to tell that story in more detail when I do a video about stealing. My ex continued to text me like normal every day for 2 weeks after we broke up, something she initiated. Eventually, I ended up telling her, look, you don't want to date, you don't want to be friends, I'm not going to keep making small talk to make you feel better. A week later, she still texted me to wish me a happy birthday. The breakup, according to her, was because I couldn't read the room. This reminds me, my ex broke up with me because I spent Father's Day with my dad. Yes, really, she wanted to hang out at the beach and was mad that I spent the day with my old man. She then proceeded to have a new BF 4 days later, and always tried to rub it in my face whenever we were in the same room. I got sick of it and just stopped talking to her. Fast forward a few years, she finds out my sister took her own life. Well, said ex then proceeds to make my sister's situation about herself and use it to shoehorn her way back into my life. When I realized that, I just stopped talking to her again, and anytime she talked to me, I would just outwardly be cold. Checking into campus housing, when I gave them my last name, fairly uncommon, and the girl says, "Do you mean insert name that rhymes with mine?" It's like, what the freak, are you seriously suggesting I don't know my own name? This is always my experience. Person, misspells my name. Me, actually, it's spelled like this, spells name. Person, no, I'm pretty sure there was an R in it. Me, just with a blank stare. This is my biggest pet peeve. I have people in my firm look up my name to send me an email and misspell my first name in the opening. In turn, I respond by misspelling their first name and signing the email with my name, or I respond back with a shortened version of their name that I know they hate. It's Monday now, and it's happened 3 times today. These people have multiple degrees, but can't pay attention to the details like someone's name. Or, and I'm gonna say this slowly for those in the back, they could be doing it on purpose. Believe it or not, there are some jerks out there that will purposely misspell people's names because they don't like them or they don't feel like they need to learn a name for whatever reason. No thank you, I don't want to work Saturday. Are you doing anything Saturday? No, I just don't want to work Saturday. You contracted me to work weekdays. Anyways, that got me a complaint filed against me for not being a team player. It was my first job after leaving school, so I never really knew how to defend myself from and stand up to office malarkey. At the time, I did do a few Saturdays to appease them, but joined a sports team to give them a reason not to. I have since left for a better job. I worked at a college bookstore while in school and kept working after I graduated. Since I had no more classes, the manager gave me a ton of hours during rush week, which was fine by me, except for the fact that he scheduled me for 11 days in a row, including a Saturday that I told him that I couldn't work ahead of time because I had a prior engagement. When I told him that I wasn't working for 11 days straight with no days off and that I had plans on that Saturday, he asked me, "Do you really have plans, or are you just saying that so you don't have to work all those days straight?" Yes, I do have plans, and even if I didn't, I need some time off. I worked at a big retail place, big yellow tag, blue polo shirts, while at university. One summer, I came up a month early to get some work in. I was a part-timer, but they were short-staffed, so they gave me 40 hours every week. I had previously told them that once school starts, I need to cut down to around 10 hours and only weekends. My first week of school, they scheduled me for 40 hours. I reminded my boss that I couldn't do that, and he said he would fix the schedule on my next shift. My next shift, he gave me a schedule for 30 hours. So I gave him my badge and walked out without even finishing that shift. If they're not gonna respect my time, I'm not gonna respect theirs. Sometimes it's okay to burn a bridge. If you want to hear about how I burned the bridge at my last job, check out the "I Quit in a Blaze of Glory" video here on the Genius channel. After you finish this video, of course. When I was a teenager, I had a crappy part-time job doing telesales for a window company. The boss, Stuart, was an absolute jerk. He was always rude and unpleasant to anyone, and nothing was ever good enough for him. We were meant to work from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., but he would keep us up for another hour afterwards each night, with no overtime pay. One night I was babysitting after work, so I told him that I absolutely must leave on time. He said, "All right." Slightly before 8 p.m., a girl came for a job interview and they went into a private room. 8 p.m. came and went and Stuart did not come out. Eventually, around 8:30 p.m., I popped my head into the interview room door and said, "Stuart, you said I could leave at 8 p.m. It's now 8:30. I need to go." He said, "Fine, leave." The next day I went into work, Stuart immediately fired me for embarrassing him in front of a potential employee. A few days later, a friend, Mike, from the telesales place called me and said that Stuart had been fired. He, Mike, had been made boss, and that I could have my job back if I wanted it. I went back to work and there was Stuart, shamefacedly sitting with the other telesales operators. Apparently he had begged for and was given a job in telesales as an operator after being fired as the boss. He was so embarrassed that he couldn't meet our eyes. Needless to say, he remained friendless the entire time he worked there. Hell yeah, screw bosses like Stuart. I had an awesome female boss when I worked at a call center, but she quickly got a better job elsewhere and was replaced by what I assumed was a 40-year-old frat boy. Dude sucks so bad that I quit on him, and to this day it's the only place that I ever quit without putting in my 2 weeks. Also, icing on the cake, a few years later I saw him working at a warehouse store that I used to work at. Guess he wasn't good enough to be manager. I work at a job where I work a week on and a week off. After my week of work, I legit had wedding stuff to do, but we were in a tough spot last month, so I worked 3 extra days, just to help out. I told them after that I'm busy. Well, 2 days later, I get a call from my boss. Boss, hey, I need you to work tonight, alright? Me, I can't, I'm busy the rest of the week. Excuse me? I said I can't, I'm busy the rest of the week. Busy with what, huh? Drinking and partying? What? Who said anything about drinking and partying? My boss legit couldn't wrap his head around the fact that we have lives outside of this job. He legit threatened to not give me my time off that I requested over this. Basically called me a sack of crap for not pitching in. I just worked 3 days overtime, so 10 days in total. I called him out on literally everything he said and he backtracked on it and even apologized. Then says, "You realize I can write you up over this, right?" I said, "Write me up for what? Being busy on my week off? Yeah, that would be dumb." My boss, "Yeah, it would." Get out of here with that crap. What's funny is since that conversation, the word has gotten around about our conversation, and apparently he told everyone that he caught me in a big lie about being busy when I wasn't, and that he put me in my place and gave me a stern talking to because I disrespected him. He never caught me in any lie because there was no lie to tell. I also never disrespected him. I made it a point to stay calm as freak during that whole conversation, and to talk to him with respect. I feel like he just wanted to look like a macho boss, but he's going around making it look like he caught me in some big lie that isn't true. I mean, he even apologized. What's sad though is I told him that it sucks to put 5 years here and he basically told me I'm worthless just because I couldn't work one night. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Otherwise, you wouldn't be saying I'm sorry and how can I make it right? By treating me with some decency? How about that? It's crazy to me that it's hard for my boss to believe that after a week of work straight, we might have some crap going on in our own life. It's like in his head, everything is about this job. Sorry, man, but some people have lives outside of work too. We dropped our dog off at the groomer for her usual trim. When I returned 3 hours later, the receptionist returned with a dog that, while adorable, was definitely not our dog. Not the same breed or even the same size. I chuckled and said, "That's definitely not my dog." To which the receptionist thought the appropriate reply was, "Yes, that's Miley. That was her name, but not the same dog. I think I know what my own dog looks like, miss." Well, that's her. If you don't like the cut, you can discuss it with the groomer. That dismissive comment immediately made me lose my patience. Hey, get out from behind that desk and take this dog. We will go back there together and I will show you which dog is mine. I am not going to waste another breath arguing with you. Let's go. I found our Miley. It was the dog that was excited instead of confused when they saw me. I ended up getting that grooming for free. I was a CSR for a popular pizza chain and was handed a phone with an angry customer on the other line. They were complaining about having their pizza messed up, and I asked them what they ordered. Over the next few minutes, their story kept on changing. At first it was the sauce, and then it was the toppings, and then they were missing a side. I called them out on it, and I told him to go scam some other restaurant. Needless to say, he got only one F-bomb in before I hung up on him. My one rule of thumb is to never disrespect the people that handle your food, because you just might end up with some extra ingredients if you piss them off. When I found out about my ex-husband's last affair, he had several, I told him to open his iPad and start looking for a place to stay, as he sure as hell wasn't going to be staying in the house. He sat there and just looked at me like I was joking. I said, your fingers aren't broken, start typing away and find a place. I can either pack your bag for you and it will be done in 3 seconds, or you can pack it yourself. I said you have 3 choices, the car, the gutter, or find a friend. He then stood up and made his way to the bedroom to pack. Said he can stay at a friend's house. I said, I don't care where you stay, it just won't be here. He moved in with the last affair that he had the following day. Yeah, that would be the day I quit my 16-year-old job, because they informed me that the money earmarked for my recovery from a work-related stress was for other people who might need it, and I would have to start paying out of pocket. After 10 minutes of chewing the HR rep out over the phone about how I was done and how horrible that place had become, and how I never wanted to see or hear from anyone there again, I got, so what time will you be back in the office? All I could do was hang up the phone, thank the therapist I could no longer afford, and go home. I never set foot in that office again. It was frankly one of the best days of my life, but a definite did I stutter moment. I was working at Wally World and a customer was on his phone from the start of the transaction. Do not do this. Placed a big package of toilet paper on the belt. I told him that it was $10 even. He was still on his phone and handed me a $10 bill. I gave him his receipt and he walked away. Right before he walked out, he noticed that I didn't give him any change and he tried to argue with me that I didn't tell him that it was $10 and he wanted a refund. I sent him to customer service because I couldn't give him a refund even if I wanted to, and he mumbled under his breath that I was a dumb bee. I replied, it's not my fault that you were on your phone. He turned his head and said, what did you say? I slammed my hands down on the countertop and said loud and clear, I said it's not my fault you were on your phone. He took a step back and left, and I went on my break. Worth it. Not me who said it, and it wasn't in a rude context, but I went on a date with the guy and tickets were cheap that night. As I was pulling out my wallet to pay for my ticket, he stopped me and says, nah, I got it. I asked him if he was sure and he says, did I stutter? What makes that funny to this day is he did have a stutter, so when he said that, it was smooth as hell. Cosplayers of Reddit, what's the cringiest interaction you've had at an event? By the way, there's going to be a lot of character names in this video. I apologize in advance if I say them wrong. Was cosplaying Black Cat from Spider-Man. It was a very tight and form-fitting costume, and I opted not to wear underwear because you could very clearly see the lines in the costume if I did. Had some guy come up behind me and unzip my suit, which wouldn't have been so bad if the zipper didn't go all the way down to the bottom of my butt. For 10 seconds, my pale back and butt were very exposed. Dude, this is 100% not okay. Yeah, and the security was non-existent. It was just staff, mostly female, and nothing was done. It was a cute little con, and it was in its first year, I think. They didn't know what to expect, and it probably wasn't that. Unless you're going to a major convention, I'd expect security and staff to be pretty bad. I would assume most of the budget would go to securing talent for the cons, so the rest is a free-for-all. But screw the guy that did this to this cosplayer. I witnessed a sussy bear cosplay that is associated with kidnapping children throw a little girl over his shoulder and run off. Little girl was fine, but later told me and the group that we had been dancing with she didn't know the guy, so that's pretty sus. It was probably some idiot being in character for laughs. That said, he's lucky he didn't get killed. Jesus, dude, you're going to pretend to kidnap a child? Yeah, this type of behavior at cons is all too common and needs to stop. I think it's gotten better over the years, at least I hope it has, but being in character half the time feels like an excuse for people to be creepy or jerks. Looking at you, weird Deadpools. So I went to my first con a few years ago. I wasn't brave enough to dress up, so I wanted to take pics instead. I saw a really amazing Doctor Who cosplay, so I asked him for a hug and a pic. He was really enthusiastic about it, and we had a pic ready to go until I heard a gruff, "Hurry up, other people want a hug too." This large middle-aged lady in a tight tank top was giving us this glare. Legit, the cosplayer went from happy to miserable as soon as we took the pic. Like, holy cow, these cosplayers aren't props, they're people. Don't demand physical contact, you have to ask. He definitely didn't give up a hug for her. On the bright side, this year I will be doing a dress-up cosplay, and I hope that it'll be fine. I dressed up as the 11th Doctor at San Diego Comic-Con one year, and I saw a vendor wearing a fez, and so I said nice fez in passing, but I thought he didn't hear me, so I just walked by him. But then I heard a sonic screwdriver noise from behind me, and it was the guy with the fez, and I used my sonic to signal back. It was pretty awesome. This was kinda cringy and hilarious. So at my first con I was dressed as Silk Spectre 2, comic book version. I was still using my cane because I was only a year out from my accident. This guy decides that obviously I'm his one true love or something, and I'm not able to hustle away fast enough to escape easily. I lose him a few times, but he keeps popping up and hitting on me, and making comments about how I should have been Silk Spectre 1. This is at least 2 or 3 hours of this Romeo following me around. Well, somehow I managed to lose him, and I end up asking this beefy old dude if he minds that I take the preoccupied chair at his table, since my hips and legs are acting up. Half an hour later, we are chatting and having a good old time when my Romeo shows up. Romeo looks at me, Romeo looks at beefy old guy looks at me, and I guess I must have looked scared or creeped out or something because the beefy old guy stands up and leans real close to Romeo's face and says, "Can I help you with something?" Romeo screws off. I eventually get up and walk away when the table gets busy. Then I glance at the banner above the table as I walk away. Beefy old guy was Lou Ferrigno. Dude, I absolutely love con stories like this. I remember another time when I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I was just looking at some random DC figures that were supposed to come out later that year. To my surprise, some dude stands right next to me looking at the same figures. So I kinda catch him out of the corner of my eye, and when I turn to look at him, it's one of the goats of comic book writing, Jeff Johns. My stupid face asks, "Are you Jeff Johns?" And with a smile, he responds, "Yup." I told him that he was a huge inspiration to my writing, and I got a pic. Dude was super cool, even if Snyder Bros would tell you otherwise. I was cosplaying a popular children's show character, Buster from Arthur. A mom tried flirting with me in front of her child after taking the photo. "What you doing later? Wanna grab a coffee?" But the worst thing I've seen? This guy fully walks up to this girl and cups her booba. He wanted to see if they were real. I don't get why there aren't more people getting punched in the face at these cons, because that's exactly what I would do if some random person came up and groped me. I've never been to a con, I'd love to go and cosplay, but I'm afraid of people doing stuff like that, especially after reading this thread of some of the stories. Those kind of things are rare. If you're curious about it, find a friend to go with you. Also, most cons have security and are very clear about harassment policies. They can and will kick out creeps if you report them. Went to a con as Zuko from Avatar. An Aang cosplayer approached me excitedly to talk about the show, but after 10 minutes, pulled out his phone and wanted me to read his X-rated Avatar fanfic. Proceeded to tell me how long he had been working on the fanfic and how he was planning out the rest of the story to have books like the show itself. This thing looked to be novel length by this point. I politely excused myself and left. But this guy later found me on Facebook and sends me NSFW Avatar fan art every now and then. Okay, this is a PSA for all spicy content enjoyers. Some of y'all really need to learn when and when not to talk about spicy content. Learn to read the room, as some would say. I love me some spicy content, but I'm definitely not talking to a person I just met about those interests. Come on, y'all. I had some small cake pieces with me for friends, carried it in an open plastic box in my hands. In the tram to the convention, I met an older lady. We started talking about my costume and what all these funny looking people were here for and so on. While I explained it to her, she was suddenly looking for something in her handbag, pulled out a small plastic spoon and helped herself to my cake while listening to me. I was too confused to say anything and let her finish. I even jumped out of the tram a station earlier because I was worried about more of the cake being eaten. It's a weird story, but looking back now, I should have offered her more. I don't know what it takes for you to eat a stranger's cake in a tram without asking first if you can have some. This is just bizarre. Makes me wonder what her life looks like. Maybe she eats from other plates and tables at restaurants too. Joey doesn't share food! Can I be the cringe? I cosplayed as Naruto when I was 13, and a Sasuke cosplayer who was 14 quote-unquote made out with me, which was basically biting my mouth. It went semi-viral on YouTube to the point where I was offered money. I had forgotten about that video until that email, and then decimated my whole YouTube account when I was 15 or 16. Good lord, I was a horrible weeb, and I have so many stories. A few years back, my then girlfriend was cosplaying Cell from Portal at a con. It was mostly great. Everyone and their mom wanted a photo with her. Except this one guy who decided to grill her on how much she really knew about Portal. He was looking at her like he had just found a unicorn. But she was pissed as hell that some stranger thought she needed to prove herself to him. I think he thought it was flirting. Guys, you really need to stop doing this to women. Actually, you just need to stop doing this to anyone. No one should have to prove their fandom to you. And if you are just trying to ask a question, keep it to 1, maybe 2 questions max. If they aren't asking you questions as well, they probably don't want to talk that much. I was cosplaying as Red X from Teen Titans, and I had this 16-year-old girl dressed up as Raven follow me around trying to give me a kiss all day. I was 20 at the time. And no, I didn't kiss her, by the way. I dressed up as Edward Elric. My friend was dressed as Envy from FMA. The show was still super popular back then, and glomping was a thing. Some girl ran up behind me at top speed and jumped on my back. And I'm tall, not short like Ed, and bashed me into a table and brought me to my knees. It was horribly embarrassing and painful. What's glomping? Sounds spicy. Glomping is essentially when someone runs at you full speed and jumps into your arms, or jumps on your back and clings on. Some people even do it without their target knowing it's going to happen, and you get the result of the OP here. It's usually posted around in generic rules listing at big conventions. No glomping, along with cosplay is not consent. There's this YouTuber with millions of followers that got famous for this said glomping. Or at least that's what it seems like. I personally can't stand this creator because I feel like this type of content enables other people to do it at cons. For all I know, they could be a cool person, but they do come off as extremely annoying in those videos. Also, if someone dove at me at full speed, you're getting a Kenny Omega knee to the face. More funny than cringy, but my husband doesn't really attend cons anymore because he feels he's too old for them. Before he stopped going, we attended Anime Central in 2002 in Chicago. We passed by a group of Harry Potter cosplayers wearing striped scarves, and my husband turned to me and said, "It's good to know the kids still like Doctor Who." Some girl asked me to sing a duet in the karaoke room, which I agreed to. 30 seconds in, and I realized that it's some anime song that is sung in Japanese, and it's 8 minutes long. It was the longest and most cringiest 8 minutes of my life while butchering the Japanese language in front of an audience. Not really cosplay, but at the midnight showing of the last Harry Potter movie, I was dressed in a Slytherin t-shirt with my house scarf. I was standing with some friends and some girl came up to me and said that I was everything that was wrong with this world. I asked what she was talking about and she yelled, "Anyone who truly likes Slytherin is a bane on humanity." I just stared as her friends took her away. At Anime Matsuri last month, I was cross-playing as Prompto, with my friend as Noctis, a much younger Noctis cosplayer. They looked to be around 13 or 14, whereas we were in our mid-20s, came up to us and said that their Prompto really wanted to meet us. We followed this fellow cosplayer over to their group of friends, introduced ourselves to the other Prompto, and took some selfies and had some laughs. Apparently, the kids felt super comfortable around us because they then proceeded to pull out their sketchbooks and show us some explicit fan art they had drawn while loudly describing each spicy scene in detail. Needless to say, my friend and I exchanged a look of abject horror and hightailed it out of there, torn between feeling utterly skeevy and biting down the urge to call their mothers. Obviously, there are kids who wander into the not safe for work side of a fandom, but to have literal children showing me the stuff that they drew in real life was positively jarring. I cosplayed as Skull Kid last year. I don't know how it is at American Comic Cons, but in my country there is a lot of people with signs like free hugs, and sometimes they do it without asking. If this wasn't cringy already, since I 3D printed my mask, the pointy ends were, well, very pointy. When some weeb hugged me without asking, they usually got stabbed by the mask and laughed in an uncomfortable way and ended running off after the hug as soon as possible. I was dressed as Mermaid Man from SpongeBob, and I went up to a table to buy a poster, and this guy was like, "Hey, there's Barnacle Boy here." I said, "Where?" Because I saw no Barnacle Boy at the con yet. He said, "You." And everyone laughed because they didn't realize I wasn't Barnacle Boy and they thought I forgot what my costume was. Screw that guy, I was Mermaid Man. Went to a con with my girlfriend, who was dressed as Black Canary. I was Green Arrow. Naturally, some people asked of pictures of us or with us. Alright, cool, no big deal. What was weird was the number of guys that wanted a picture with just her. One guy even came up, asked if he could take a picture with us, and after we agreed, he handed me the camera. Oh, okay, I see what's happening here. But the cringiest moment was this one guy, maybe 20 years older than us. He asked for a picture of her. We were used to it at this point, so it's whatever. Then proceeds to spend about a good 60 seconds taking the photo. I don't know if he was taking multiple photos or if he was trying to get the perfect booba picture or what. But ain't no way it takes a full minute to take a single photo on a cell phone. Still, the day was super fun and hopefully we get the chance to go back in the future. Man, I wish I could say that cons don't have the creepy guys that take photos, but they are out there and they usually look like the mental picture of the creepy guy that you have in your head. I go to Dragon Con with my wife and like to take photos. Sometimes when I ask cosplay couples for a picture, the guy will usually say, "Did you want me or just her?" And I'm like, of course I want you, come on. I always feel bad for those dudes. Like, how many skeezy guys must be coming up and asking for pictures of just the girl? What a weird thing to do. See, I told you, some weird dudes with cameras at every con. I dressed up as Rose Quartz from Steven's Universe, and a neckbeard type guy sort of dressed as a character from the same show approached me by coming up right behind me and said, "Rose, you're my waifu," while I was talking to a vendor. He had the greasiest hair I've ever seen and really bad BO. He asked for a picture and I said okay, and then he asked me to pose like I was kissing his cheek, and I said no. He got upset and said that I had to because he loved Rose, blah 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 blah, and I didn't know how to disengage. Funnily enough, a Pearl cosplayer intervened and told him to beat it. I've never seen Steven's Universe, but if this is how all the characters act in the show, this is a pretty funny interaction. I dressed as Junkrat for a con, and at the time I had no idea how many kids played Overwatch. So for the entire day, all I got was 10-year-olds shouting references and wanting photos with me, and their parents giving me really strange looks. I cosplayed Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show at a Comic-Con about a year ago. I had a lot of pleasant interactions with other cosplayers during the day. Lots of, "Ooh, I love that movie," "Hey, do the time warp," sort of conversations. A few people hit on me. I'm a woman in fishnets and a corset at a Comic-Con. I was expecting that. Nothing too weird or uncomfortable. And then there was this one dude and his friend. They kept following me around, talking to me about weird personal topics and getting far too handsy. Eventually I started to get nervous, so I excused myself to the bathroom. I just wanted to distance myself from them a little bit. As I go to leave, the guy goes, "Wait! Before you go, can I get a picture?" Okay, fine, just take the photo and then leave me alone. So the guy grabs me, picks me up and throws me over his shoulder so my butt is sticking up in the air, in fishnets and bikini bottoms. And his buddy takes a photo. Then he drops me back on the ground and the two guys take off. It all happened in about 10 seconds, so I barely had time to react. Some guy dressed as Deadpool helped me up and walked me to the security booth to report the guys. But nothing came of it. So that was weird, cringy, and terrifying. I don't cosplay Frank anymore. Dude, I hate this and screw those guys. I hate how people have the ability to just ruin something for people by their actions that they make. Shout out to Deadpool for helping out the OP. Oh man, myself and a few friends occasionally go to cons just to hang out, drink, and buy some merch. But I'll never forget a local con in the early fall of 2008. We usually never go in cosplay, but Guru Login was still in a fever pitch of popularity at the time, and one of my friends was really big on it, and went dressed as Kamina while the rest of us went in regular clothes. It's worth noting that said particular friend is a decent looking 6'4" fellow and was training for a marathon at the time, so he pulled off a pretty damn Kamina. This turned into a day from nerd hell. From the moment we walked into the main hall, he was assaulted in nearly every manner by girl and guy alike. Tons of people wanted pictures with him or of him posing. Endless pictures, and countless times random girls, and a couple of guys, would run out of nowhere and jump onto him, which resulted more often than not, him nearly dragged to the ground by those random attackers. I can actually still remember to this day, one girl screaming, "Coming Hana-san, I love you! As she flung herself at my friend. He did his damnedest to be nice and friendly for the pictures, while the rest of us spent more time acting as impromptu bodyguards for him than enjoying the convention. Needless to say, he doesn't care much to cosplay these days. I will say cosplay is fun, but you have to mentally prepare for it. I did a group X-Men cosplay one year, classic cartoon X-Men, and people loved it. We took a bunch of photos, but one thing that I wasn't prepared for was the people in my group wanting to shop and get free stuff. I was in cosplay, I wasn't at the con trying to hold anything other than my cosplay props. Needless to say, there was a little bit of tension in the group after group cosplay day. The only time I ever cosplayed, I cosplayed as one of the Love Live character school uniforms. Blazer, white dress shirt, really short skirt. Literally 5 minutes after showing up to the convention, I turned around on the escalator and caught the dude behind me trying to look up my skirt. Let me go ahead and share my own personal cringe story that actually involves me. Now, I often consider myself someone who can talk or have a conversation with anybody, but it's usually in a chill and comfortable setting. San Diego Comic-Con is neither of those things. It's hectic and crowded. This cringe interaction happened a few years ago. I was randomly walking by a booth and I saw this cosplayer that I follow on social media. She wasn't currently talking to anyone, so I figured why not try and start up a conversation. So I decided to ask her about cosplay, and at this moment she was wearing a green version of a Playboy bunny outfit, which is a pretty common thing at cons, but they're usually combined with a character. I tell her that I enjoyed her work and I was curious if she planned on doing any DC comic characters in the future because I haven't seen her do many. It's at this moment that I want to say she responded with a kind of sarcastic maybe, but that's when some dude wanted a picture with her, so I just said bye and left. I personally felt like the convo was a bit awkward, probably because during the whole conversation I was telling myself not to be the guy that overstays their welcome, which you see a lot at cons. So I just tried to make a quick conversation, which was bad. Anyways, I end up getting on social media later in the day and I see that she posted a photo of herself at the con. Turns out the Playboy bunny outfit that she was wearing was a version of Poison Ivy, a DC character. She even had a small little plant-like prop with her to show that she was Poison Ivy. I just completely face-palmed when I realized what I had asked her earlier in the day, and it made sense why her response felt kinda sarcastic. Definitely not my brightest moment.
Parents of Reddit, what is your kid doing or wearing that you hope is just a phase? My 7-year-old saw a ceiling fan installation video on YouTube, and he's now obsessed with ceiling fans. He's gonna ask Santa Claus for 4 new ceiling fans for Christmas. My teenage son is going through the I don't have to shower every day even after rugby practice phase. I've tried to tell him he stinks, but for some reason he thinks I'm crazy. I hope this ends soon. My teenage daughter claims that our family is a communist dictatorship and she has no rights. I sighed and told her it's more like a fascist dictatorship or maybe even a monarchy. He won't shave his beard. He's 17 and it's very thin and long. Reminds me of the first time I saw my own armpit hair when I was in middle school. I'm getting married next week and I asked him to shave. And he said, "But mom, it'll take me like 2 years to grow it back." So we compromised that he would at least trim it shorter. Lying, but in a really incompetent way. She's nearly 3 and has started trying to get out of doing stuff by making the most outrageous and clearly untrue statements. Like, you can't brush my hair, I haven't got a head. And I can't put my shoes on, I'm a box and boxes don't have feet. And things like that. I try not to just laugh in her face, but it's difficult. My 12-year-old is obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's. It wouldn't be so bad if every electronic device he got his hands on didn't get a profile or something named after some weird animatronic character. He made 4 new separate user accounts on the netbook that we let him use to play Minecraft, named them all after FNAF characters. My son is 13. He recently started insisting on tucking his pants, usually sweatpants, into his socks, and pulling his socks up and then wearing sandals. I told him he looks like a pirate with 2 wooden legs. He's a tall, thin stick of a boy. So far, no one else has mentioned it to him, so he thinks I'm just being silly. So my 4-year-old is obsessed with Minecraft. I enjoy it quite a lot also, but I'm really only playing it because he wants to watch. but he keeps wanting me to do creepy things. Like the latest thing he wants me to do is to build tracks and collect all of the villagers into a place and build a machine to kill them. I know they aren't real people or anything, but no, I'm not going to build concentration camps. My son is wearing pull-ups, and if the smell is any indication, he's currently crapping his pants while grunting and telling me right to my face that he doesn't have to go poop. This is getting really old. I have a 14-year-old who is obsessed with socks. He spent like $19 on a single pair of socks. They have to be these Nike Elite gold-plated something something. I hope he grows out of this fast. Crying. Just crying and screaming for hours and hours and hours to the point where I consider taking him to be seen by a doctor. Then, just as I'm about to arrange it, he stops. Then does it again. He's only 5 days old, but I'm already feeling the pressure and stress. So, my 12-year-old son keeps saying that he's a bean boy. At first, I thought it was just a stupid game, but I checked his internet history and it is 85% bean related. I really hope it's just a phase. My 10 and 13-year-old are all hot topic, all the time. As a legit punk kid back in the 80s, this seems wrong to me. My tights were shredded because I was too poor to get new ones. It was just a bonus that they look cool. Hot Topic has some cool things, but I feel like it should be utilized to enhance a look, not to just be a head-to-toe walking marketing ad for their stuff. My 5-year-old is hitting that kindergarten phase where he's stretching his wings, experimenting with independence, and seeing exactly how far he can push his parents before something really bad happens. He'll sneer or glare at you when you tell him not to do something bad. But once you get in his face and tell him in no uncertain terms exactly what'll happen to him if he keeps it up, he starts crying. Can't have it both ways, bud. If you're old enough to run out into the street by yourself and laugh the first time I yell at you about it, you're too old to get out of a punishment by crying like a baby. His sister went through this phase too, and she got over it. Now she's the sweetest, most empathetic, most respectful little thing you could ever dream of raising. I'm sure he'll get there too. My 5-year-old is obsessed with Bowser from Mario Brothers. He talks about him all the time. It's getting old, and I wonder what the other kids in his kindergarten class think. Or maybe they obsess about similar things too. My 3-year-old has just discovered his personal bits and can not only pee in the potty, but if properly angled, can form a fine arc of urine that will land on anything he aims it at, which at the moment tends to be the cat. Yes, my toddler is peeing on the cat, which then runs all over the place, getting it everywhere. Thank you, toddler. Your girlfriends of the future will be hearing all about this. Not my parents, but my brothers hope that listening to rock music is just a phase. I'm a 20-year-old black man. God, please help me. My son has a fedora. Knee-high, neon-colored Nike socks. With shorts, naturally. Elementary school fashion can be mind-boggling. Growling loudly at everything. He's 2.5. Just flew to Orlando from the UK. Funny for the first hour, not so much for the next 8 or so. Minecraft and KSP. Granted, I play a lot of KSP, but I had to buy his own laptop and get it for him because he was messing up daddy's missions. My son has lately become obsessed with designer clothes that I can't afford at all. He's been pestering for a hoodie from some Born by Wolves or something like that, and I can't fathom how any sane person would pay $175 for a hoodie. I hope he grows out of it and starts saving the money I give him instead of spending it irresponsibly like he's doing now. Pull-ups at night. He's gonna be 7, and although most mornings that pull-up is relatively dry, I'm looking forward to never buying another diaper or pull-up again. My 5-year-old is 100% bathroom independent. He just forgets to wipe half the time. He also has a bad habit of waiting until the last possible minute he can hold his pee. This means he either A, unleashes the beast and lets fly, or B, has trouble with his belt and wets himself. Sure, it's sort of fun predicting when the cross-house potty sprint is going to occur, but it cannot be healthy. Pooping in the shower and towing it down the drain. He gets it on the curtains and everything. No idea how he does it. My 12-year-old has been obsessed with yo-yos for a while now. I was afraid he was going to get picked on at school because of it. Turns out he's gotten a bunch of other kids interested in them, enough that they're starting a yo-yo club to teach each other yo-yo tricks. One of their APs is going to help with that part, and the engineering teacher is going to help them design and make yo-yos on the new 3D printers. My son is almost 2 and he loves Dark Souls. Everything about it. He watches speedruns, walkthroughs all day. I've tried to get him to watch little kid programming and he won't. He watches for a whole 2 minutes and then brings me the Xbox controller and says, "Ma, Dark Souls." He has swords and shields and he enjoys sword fighting now. If you pretend to stab him with a sword, he'll fall down, then get up and pretend to crush a life gem. The sound effect included. Praise the sun, I guess. I got the perfect one, but it was me. It was a blue blazer that I had painted with flames on the lapel and a skull on the back. Cool idea, horrible execution. And the jacket was so ratty. Frozen. She has this one dress that she wears, it gets washed, she wears it again, lather, rinse, repeat. We watch that stupid movie almost every day. She's onto her second copy. She has a cape that goes over her regular clothes on the day her dress is being washed. I can repeat the entire script. I'm over Frozen. Not a parent, but my nephew pretty much lives with us, so close enough. He's 5 and is right in the midst of his picky eating stage. It's so annoying because we'll be eating one thing and he'll insist on eating something else. And he's hardcore, so he'll literally starve himself rather than eat what we're eating. So we usually have to give in. But sometimes we're eating a food he likes, but because he doesn't want that food that day, he'll try to claim he doesn't like it.
I don't like pizza though. We ate pizza yesterday. Yeah, but I was just pretending because I don't like pizza. I like pasta.
He's a great kid, polite and kind. But sometimes I want to drop kick him a few miles because he's getting on my nerves. Not a parent, but my 14-year-old brother wore shorts to school the last 2 days with temperatures between 0 to minus 10 degrees Celsius. My 3-year-old likes to pull his bits out of his pull-up and yell,
"Look at my dingle!"
I really hope this stops before I send him to daycare. My son is a brony. I just have to keep reminding myself that he's not drinking or doing drugs. Then again, teenagers have been drinking and doing drugs for centuries, and mostly turn out okay. Aspiring to be a magical horse from a show intended for kids half their age? Not sure how that'll turn out. My 7-year-old daughter will be fully dressed inside as though it's snowing and cold. She also refuses to wear matching gloves or socks. Please keep in mind that it's 76 degrees in my house. I guess it's more his attitude, but he's really materialistic and status conscious. At least as much as a 6-year-old can be. He's always comparing his stuff to other people's stuff. I don't really understand where he gets it from, because I'm not like that at all. On the one hand, it's cool if he's willing to work for the nice things he wants. On the other hand, it's not cool if he's just so obsessed that it's taking over parts of his brain, you know? He only wants to play sports that have the most gear, because he likes the gear, not necessarily the sport, and he has to have the nicest shoes. If his friends have some cool thing, he must also have that cool thing. He's the one who leaves the toy store saying, "That's really cool you got me these things, but why didn't you get me this too?" Yes, I've tried putting everything back and leaving the toy store. This just seems to be the way he is right now. He also thinks he's an expert after spending 2 minutes learning about something. That is really infuriating. No, you're not an expert on sharks because we read half of a kid's book on sharks. He also likes to be the best. No, you're not good enough to be in the NHL. You're 6. Okay, yeah, you're a good skater now, but guess what? If you just sit there congratulating yourself instead of practicing, all those other guys on your little league team will blow right by you next year. I mean, I don't say this to him, I just tell him to keep practicing. I don't know what to do anymore. My 9-year-old son really likes sleeveless shirts. My grandma bought him a bunch, and he chooses his daily outfit, which is always a sleeveless shirts with shorts every day. All of the shorts he owns are plaid. It's like he's all preppy on the bottom and hillbilly on the top. I don't care too much because who really gives a crap what their kids wear as long as 1, it's appropriate for the event, and 2, is clean. It's embarrassing to go out in public with him, but screw it, he's happy. I'm 24 and childless, but I really hope my rabbit stops pooping on my sofa soon. Not a parent, but my little brother has been playing a lot of computer games, and instead of using the normal hand configuration, ring finger on A, middle on W and S, and index on D, like a normal person, he uses his index for all 4 keys. It drives me crazy. My 9-year-old daughter dresses in as much black as she can get her hands on, and is flattered when people compare her to Wednesday Addams. She's also very into some YouTube channels that I really don't get, like Miranda Sings, and endless videos of people putting together outfits for different occasions. Which wouldn't be that weird if she didn't try to insist on spending 80% of her life in the same shapeless black schmat. My 6-year-old thinks he's Bruce Lee. And my 9-year-old thinks he's Paul Phoenix. Roughhousing is good, but honestly, they tag team me while I'm asleep. All I hear is, "What-a?" and I'm out cold again. Not a parent, but as a kid, I used to have a Hercules phase after binge watching the Disney movie. Used to take one arm out of my shirt like a toga and walk around with a sword, insisting to be called Hercules. I do miss my toga. Obnoxious YouTube videos. My Little Pony, Shopkins, Minecraft. I don't know how these people get so popular because their voices are downright painful. I truly wonder if Cookie Swirl C keeps friends with her fakey little girl voice. She has to be in her early 20s. I want an interview where she's asked, "What do people say when they find out your YouTube is all about you playing with kids' toys?" My daughter is obsessed with death. She's 9 and will ask hypothetical questions such as, "If this ferry sank, how many people would die?" Or, "Are there sharks in these waters? How many people have been eaten?" She seems to have toned it down a little bit in the last few months at least. I am so sick of Caillou and Daniel Tiger, these whiny little brats. But she's 5, and it's nice that she's not watching gender-driven drivel or wants to watch stuff with material that's too mature for her. My 7-year-old keeps making giant monoliths in Minecraft for Lego characters. His village worships a 400-foot Emmet. House full of 15-year-old girls, and they all call each other, and me sometimes, bruh. It's like they aren't even trying to finish a whole word. They gave up in the middle of it. Crocs. My 8-year-old has a hand-me-down pair. 4-year-old was dying for a pair like her big sis. Then 2-year-old wanted some too. Next thing I know, my husband will want a pair. And divorce is just too expensive. Hoping the Crocs phase goes away soon. She likes to drop her pants, shake her butt at me, and sing, "Botswana, Botswana!" She's nearly 6. At least she only does it at home. My daughter likes to sleep during the day when I'm awake, and then fuss and not want to go to sleep at night when mom is tired. She's a month old, but I can't wait until we get her schedule all figured out. My 2-year-old marches around the house with T-Rex arms and growls at us. She'll also chase us around the house while planning to be a dinosaur. Scares the crap out of other kids who come over to visit. Now that I think about it, she learned it from me, so might not be growing out of this one. My 13-year-old daughter judges everyone who is the least bit different from her, and is incredibly annoyed by almost everyone and everything. I'm really hoping she'll quickly learn to just stop caring. My teenage daughter is dating a girl, which I completely support. I'm just surprised. I just wish she would change because I have no clue how to deal with it. Do I treat her girlfriend like I would a boyfriend? Not allowed in my daughter's room, not allowed out late, etc.? Or do I let her run wild like I do when she's out with her other female friends? It seems wrong to treat her differently than the other girls, but at the same time, I don't want my daughter doing things she's too young for. This would be so much easier if it were a phase, or if she were already an adult. I could just be like, "Hey, that's awesome," and move on. Instead of getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, my 4-year-old pops a squat right beside her bed and pees all over the floor. I make her clean it up every time, yet she still does it. Roblox on my gaming PC. He's 11 and always goes back to Roblox. I don't get it. I have a huge Steam library, but I can't get him to play anything else. When my daughter gets upset, annoyed, overwhelmed, or overtired, she turns her head to the right and spits on the floor, like a continuous 6-inch long saliva snail. My kid is about to be 3, and for the last 4 months or more, he's been using the toilet absolutely fine. Now, all of a sudden, he poops in the garden. He likes the moon to see his bum plums. His words, not mine. I have a 22-month-old boy, and he's obsessed with plucking the hair out of all of his teddies and any toys that have hair, to the point that the seams tear open. He'll then cram as much of it as humanly possible up his nose. I have no idea where he got this from, and it's worrying that it'll get stuck one time. We've binned all furry teddies since, but any chance he gets, he'll try to pluck carpets, rugs, and even blankets. The boy is a nutcase. Anytime anybody farts, my 3-year-old blames me, even when I'm not even in the same building as him. My 2-year-old sucks juice out of his beaker and spits it on the carpet, then tries to suck it back up. It's really gross. I don't know why he does it, and it's really hard to stop him because, dehydration. It's a work in progress. Not my child, but my 11-year-old sister is obsessed with Halo. She's never played it, but loves everything about it. She knows more about it than me. Apparently, Master Chief's name is John. Who knew? If she finds some sort of Halo-related item in a store, she'll buy it and document the opening process by recording it. If she doesn't have the money to buy it, she'll document the find by, of course, recording it. It's not that bad. I find it cute. She also draws a really good Master Chief. She has around 200 plus drawings somewhere. She doesn't draw him to exact detail, kinda adds her own little flair. Also draws those little pet shop toys as Marines. I don't know, she's weird. My 7-year-old son is obsessed with Michael Jackson, specifically Smooth Criminal. He loves Minecraft and Five Nights at Freddy's too, but the MJ thing is borderline disturbing. He had a Michael Jackson birthday party, records videos of himself dancing in costume to Smooth Criminal, has several movies, CDs, a video game, an action figure, several costumes, and can tell you exactly what vitiligo is. He has all of these things because I choose to enthusiastically endorse pretty much anything he does. And I figure the fastest way for something to lose its sparkle is for the parents to think it's cool. Other than people thinking it's strange, his obsession has only caused public awkwardness once. We were out to dinner and there was another family in the restaurant that included 3 teenage sons with huge, luxurious afros. The parents were interracial and my son was open-mouthed gawking at them. The restaurant was a buffet, so there were several passes back and forth by us. And at one point, he whispers to me, "Mom, they look like the Jackson 5. I love their hair." He genuinely admired them and innocently wanted to look at them. But we live in Southeast Texas, so I'm sure they're used to getting gawked at in public for less pleasant reasons. He's too young to understand about the allegations against Michael, and he just thinks most people think MJ was a little strange and made up not nice stories about him because he was famous.
What went away because of smartphones? Portable MP3 players. I used to work in a warehouse and we weren't allowed to have our cell phones with us. Well, no devices with any cameras on them. We were allowed to listen to music and have one headphone in one ear. Everyone who worked there had a cheap MP3 player for that reason. It's more niche now, but there's definitely still a market for those. Audiophiles also love to have separate devices for several reasons. While iPhones are slightly better about it, Android is actually awful about playing high quality sound files, and streaming services chew through data if you want hi-fi sound. But a dedicated music player, especially if you splurge and get something like a Fio with the DAC in it, that's the good stuff. Even refurbished iPods have a decently sized market these days, although that's partially due to collectors too. Man, as I get older, I'm kind of happy that I got to experience the different eras of music, from Walkmans, aka CD players, to MP3 players, to now smartphones. To be honest, I love music, but I never really thought about how smartphones could affect the quality. I always thought it was more about the headphones you use to listen to the music. But hey, the more you know. Payphones. One day I was walking my daughter, who was 5 at the time. We came across an old payphone and she asked me what it was. I explained to her and she started laughing and said, "Mommy, they don't just put phones out in the park." It does sound absurd, but we did put them out in parks and plenty of other places. I think the last time I saw one was right outside of the local library. They were the last people to get rid of theirs. The ability to memorize phone numbers. I don't know my spouse's phone number, but I still remember the phone number of my best friend from the first grade. Totally had this conversation with my client today. I work with these teens. Turns out many of them don't save numbers in their phones, but end up learning the numbers and who the people are. Their reasoning? If for some reason something happens and they don't have their phone, they at least have the people's numbers by memory. Growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, my stepdad was involved in a lot of politics and labor union stuff. Dude knew pretty much everyone involved with that, in our city of about 500,000. And as far as I could tell, he had most of their phone numbers memorized. You could ask him random names, he'd sit there, think for a few seconds, and rattle off a phone number. This was when you didn't have to memorize an area code, so you just needed 7 digits, but still, it was pretty impressive. It's crazy how much you can remember if you actually train your brain to do so. I used to work retail, and at the time, I could have told you the number to any piece of produce if you needed to ring it up at the register. I also had about 90% of the store memorized, so I could tell you exactly where you needed to go to get something. It's all about repetition. Road maps, calculators, camcorders, privacy. The best part of every road trip when I was younger was when my sister was holding the map and then it got sucked out the window within the first 2 hours of the trip. Every damn time. Standalone GPS units for cars are fairly non-existent now. Yeah, but they seem to be huge for semi-truck drivers. You can go into most truck stops and they're still selling them from behind the glass for a few $100s to over $1,000. It's crazy. They let you put in height, weight, length, and even if you're hazmat. It's not like a TomTom. It has really everything you need to go anywhere in the country. I've never lost service with a standalone GPS. And if you're a local guy like me, you still need to figure out what signs you can ignore and what signs mean you're gonna screw up your whole damn life. It's worth $1,000 all day. The house phone with the cord that you can twirl up while you were talking. And later the cordless phone that you could never find until it rang. I always knew where the cordless phone was and was reluctant to get rid of them simply because they were useful for calling my lost smartphone. Radio Shack and other stores where you would buy cameras, stereos, and recorders. This could be a consequence of internet shops rather than mobile smartphones. Dodgy UFO sightings and the Loch Ness Monster. Don't forget Bigfoot! Phone books, notepads, cameras for everyday people. Maps, atlases, the list goes on. Well, paper notebooks are actually still having record sales. My wife is a list person and she has notebooks all over the place. Using a dictionary to find meanings of words. When I was a kid, my mom would tell me that if I didn't know how to spell a word, then I should look it up in the dictionary. Even as a kid, I thought that advice was silly. How can I find a word that I don't know how to spell? Situational awareness. Drove out on an errand yesterday. Every single person walking, jogging with headphones, mother pushing baby in a stroller, dog owner walking with their dog, were all on their phones and not paying attention to their surroundings. This is actually the best comment in this thread. You forgot about the people actively piloting cars while their eyes are on their freaking phones. T9 texting. Dude, I think I have a vague memory of what T9 texting was and I never bothered to learn it. Would the equivalent today be like swipe texting? That's pretty popular. Printed MapQuest pages. Now that is a blast from the past. I totally remember having to print out MapQuest stuff. More than 10 years ago, I made a list of physical devices that have been replaced by apps on my phone. And here's the list. Narrator here. The list was pretty long and I kinda just wanted to talk about some of the comments that were attached to the list. Oddly enough, books seem to be the first one to really reverse on going digital. For as much as I like my Kindle for travel, I still much rather have a physical book. See vinyl for music. It's probably due to the eyesore from reading from a digital screen, and the experience of being immersed into picking up a book without distractions. E-readers might solve the eye strain issue, but nothing beats reading print. Just the joy of turning the page to find out what happens next rather than pressing a button to flip to the next page, or the joy of placing a bookmark to come back the next day. There used to be so many different artistic cover arts. All these trivial things add up to the reader's immersion. Yeah, printed books are such a better experience. I am someone who likes to highlight certain things in books, mostly just books where I learn things. And I'm sure there are apps that will let you do that as well on phones, but nothing beats just flipping through a book and seeing the bright highlighted paragraphs. It's just so much easier to find important things. One word, encyclopedias. Bar arguments. No. Player X was the MVP in 1984. They're so easily solvable now. A fun 2-hour debate now lasts 9 to 14 seconds. I used to work with this loudmouth guy in the mid-2000s that would spout off made-up facts and figures during our lunch breaks. That grounded to a halt once one of us got smartphones by 2008 and just fact-checked on the spot using Google. I will say this doesn't really work with pathological liars though. They'll just say, well, I did it, or the website's wrong. Actual buttons. Rest in peace, BlackBerry. The need to just pick a random restaurant in an unfamiliar area and hope it doesn't suck. Also being restricted to only listening to what music is on the radio or on a CD in your car. For real. The younger generation will never know the hype of hearing your favorite song playing on the radio when you knew you couldn't just listen to it at any moment. Bonus thing the younger generation will never have to deal with is having to watch reruns of an anime hoping that you get the next episode. I can't tell you how many times that I saw Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z get his arm broken by Android 18 to only find out that the whole show resets back to episode 1. But man, that moment we finally got the next episode was so hype. Reading magazines while pooping. But if you've ever seen those videos about what happens when you flush a toilet, those magazines must be disgusting. At least you can clean the surface of your phone pretty easily. Photo development departments in stores. As someone who used to work in a photo place from time to time, this is probably for the best. You don't know how often people would go into a photo center trying to print copyrighted material, and we would have to turn them away and they usually got mad. Also, there was plenty of people that wanted to get their spicy photos printed at the store too. It was wild. Teens' mental health. I'd like to counter with everyone's mental health. Simply enjoying a moment. I went to a show last night and so many people were watching the show through their phone screens while recording it. In between sets, so many people would pull out their phones and watch TikToks and whatnot. Some even did this while the band was performing. I left my phone in my bag for the entirety of the show. I may not have captured memories, but I felt I was more involved with what was happening than those who couldn't set their phone aside for 5 minutes. It's the truth, and I'm happy I realized a good decade plus ago. I don't know why, but I love watching people take videos of fireworks. Just enjoy the fireworks. You're not going to rewatch the video. Honestly, even at sporting events, I see people on their phones mid-game. Sometimes just videotaping plays, or literally just scrolling through social media. I get unnecessarily annoyed by people recording fireworks. Fireworks are this full sensory experience of sound, size, and sight. It's a feeling in your body even. A phone video won't capture 95% of that experience. There has to be something more than just pointless recording. And fireworks have to be the top one for me. Unless, of course, it's a fireworks show gone wrong and they all explode at once. Now that's awesome. I will say, phones have helped us expose just how dumb people really are. I feel like every year there is a video of someone blowing off their hands with firecrackers. They explode, people. Don't hold them in your hands. The phrase, "you won't have a calculator in your pocket in the real world." Accidentally getting lost and finding something cool that you normally wouldn't have been able to experience. The expectation that you will be unreachable. The privilege of not picking up the phone and the person who called would assume that you weren't there. Nothing like when someone answered the phone and you just had to wave to that person to tell them you weren't home. Those were the days. Just enjoying the moment. Anytime me and my girlfriend are doing something nice together, she always wants to grab a picture or make a post on Instagram. If I kick up a fuss, she'll tell me that she's capturing the moment. But now the moment is tainted with distraction. I have physically wrestled my sister's phone away from her at family gatherings because she was incapable of not doing this, and using it to text updates / pictures to friends and family about what we were doing at that moment. And if you think that sounds like normal teenage behavior, you should probably know that my sister just turned 50 this year. This is a double-edged sword in my opinion because I have 2 aunts that do the same thing. They love taking photos. Not necessarily for social media, but just in general. It can be annoying, but it's also nice that someone is taking photos while everyone else can enjoy the party. Plus, those photos can easily be shared through digital albums. People talking to each other while eating. My father always had his attention on the newspaper during breakfast. And before smartphones, I spent so long reading books while eating that I'm still in a habit of eating one-handed as though I'm holding a book. Bro, ain't that the truth? Nowadays, people look at YouTube before eating rather than talking to people or watching whatever's on TV at the moment. Every little thing we do is in our control, and it's hard to control. My sister-in-law's husband is notorious at this. He will spend all dinner with his face in his phone watching stuff, most of the time without headphones on. And often at a restaurant, so she'll order his drinks and meals like he's a 5-year-old. Or if we try to even ask him a question, he'll just ignore it. We'll have a conversation with her, then he'll interrupt whatever it is we're talking about, important or not, just to show her what's on his phone. And if she doesn't immediately answer, he'll say, "Did you hear what I said?" Or he'll just be a supremely butthead and say, "You always ignore me." Now, a lot of this is because he gets away with it, and my sister-in-law enables it. And then there's the part where he's just a huge jerk. I got 2 things I want to say on these comments. 1, if you say the phrase "my sister-in-law's husband," doesn't that make them your brother? Why not just say "my brother"? And 2, what I think the original comment might have meant was people actually having conversations at dinner, for example, on a date. Things have gotten so bad that people play a game at restaurants where the first person to touch their phone has to pay for the bill. I would say if games like that are having to be created, phones are a problem. Patience. You used to have to look up a phone number, call someone, leave a message, and wait for them to call you back. Everything now is instant. People have completely lost all patience with each other, along with human decency. Knocking on doors when you get to someone's house. In America, that'll get you shot now, apparently. Horizontal videos. I hate vertical videos with a damn passion. My biggest screens are horizontal, people. You are denying clarity for those watching anywhere else outside of their phone. Also, I hate watching videos on my phone. Okay, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I will say, the one thing that does annoy me about vertical videos is that they don't look nice when displayed. If you don't know what I mean, go check your YouTube sub box at some point, and if you're subscribed to someone who does shorts, the thumbnails for those videos are all lame. YouTube is starting to notice this by adding tabs to separate the content, but it needs to happen a lot faster. Humanity, manners, and the ability to listen to someone who disagrees with you. The coming age of boys that will never know the joy of finding a random spicy magazine. Newspapers. Been in the industry for a while, and it's unfortunately dying slowly. Daily circulation numbers are pathetic. Most store copies are returned and dozens of jobs lost just this year. It's a real shame. People's brains, sanity, drive, and a few other things. In return, we got 24/7 hour tracking. Not a good deal if I say so myself. My ability to drive without getting road rage. Every mother freaker that cuts me off and slows down or nearly swerves into me from the other lane, they're on their freaking phones. People who read books. Not necessarily all of them, but I rarely ever see them around anymore, and it's kinda sad. Imagination. Now, I could see how phones do hurt imagination, but I've always had this theory that some people have imagination and others don't. I've always been curious how many substance users have imagination before using substances. I feel like that may be their first experience with imagination because they're usually going on some kind of trip. Conversations. Sure, everyone texts more than ever, but people don't seem to talk face to face. I see so many people standing next to each other looking at their phones, probably texting each other. The smartphone replaced the cigarette. We used to all sit around and smoke and talk to each other. I miss sitting for hours smoking and talking. That era is gone. Glad cigs are basically gone though. Lung disease is terrible, but we all lost convos along the way. I'm pretty sure that type of conversation still exists. People have just replaced cigarettes with other things. Decent games to a degree. The casual gaming genre picked up and moved to mobile, then it began to suck. Think back to the glory days of playing Plants vs. Zombies or Fish Tycoon on the computer. When it picked up and moved to mobile, it didn't immediately suck. Some casual games were mostly the same, just cheaper and touchscreen. Also, some new concepts utilize gyro and touchscreen controls in some cool ways. Doodle Jump, Fruit Ninja, stuff like that. But when data/Wi-Fi connections became more accessible, Facebook browsing games came to mobile. Think Farmville, Dragon City, Candy Crush. The free-to-play model took over, and now you're hard-pressed to find a decent offline game for mobile anymore. The classics are hardly even available. since they began to lack support for the newest Android/iOS update and were steadily removed from the App Store. Try and find Plant Tycoon, the original Angry Birds, or anything awesome you remember from the Advent casual mobile games. It's most certainly gone. It's probably been terribly recreated and made into a free-to-play model now. All I have to say in this argument is Konami, the company that created one of the greatest video game series ever in Metal Gear Solid, said that they were going to focus on mobile games aggressively. When free games like Fortnite are bringing in millions, why bother with great story games, right? It's sad, but true. Ability to speak in younger generations. I have 2 nephews, 18 and 15 years old. They can't fathom the idea of picking up the phone to call someone, to maybe order food, make a reservation, or even worse, calling your crush's house and not knowing who's going to pick up the phone. The genuine sense of panic they have just thinking about the world with no texting is just as alien to them as the sense of panic for calling is alien to me. To be fair here, I will say I've never been a fan of having to call to make an appointment or something like that. It's not the idea of talking to another person, it's when they ask you a question you don't have an answer to. Like if it has to deal with insurance or some type of bank number that you don't know. I just don't like the awkwardness that comes with it, and they're like, well, we kind of need that, and I'm like, I don't know how to get that, man. That's what I don't like about phone calls. People at the library. Not only has book reading diminished, but people used to go to the library to get online. Now that phones do that, libraries just seem almost deserted. Men having the balls to approach a woman they're interested in. That has nothing to do with smartphones, my guy. The plots of a lot of 90s sitcoms. There is a Sex and the City episode that comes to mind where the plot of the episode revolves around 2 characters waiting at separate entrances of a building, each thinking the other stood them up. The plot doesn't hold up at all in modern times because someone would have called or texted and they would have found each other in minutes. When 2 impatient people try to meet, they still end up not finding each other no matter how good technology gets. Character 1 texting, "Where are you?" Character 2, "Where are you? I'm at the entrance." Character 1, "No, I'm at the entrance. Nice gaslighting attempt though," blocks character 1. Character 2, "Tell me where you are right now. Hey, talk to me. Pick up the phone, please. Fine." Man, just thinking about it, if that sequence was in TV, that would be horrible. I think I'd rather go with the approach of the 90s sitcom. One thing I haven't seen on this list, but I think is definitely aided by the rise of smartphones, is customer service. Maybe it's because texting seems to be the younger generation's preferred form of communication, but I swear, customer service has never been as bad as I've seen it today. Also, I worked retail for over 5 years, so I know how much it can suck and how you just want to quit at all times. But I still tried to provide people with helpful service, especially if someone was cool or nice. But nowadays, people just stare at you like they're dead inside and want you to leave as fast as possible so they could check their phone again. It just kind of sucks.
Who's that guy or that girl from your office, and what did they do to earn that title? I'll start. I used to work inside sales at an HVAC company just outside of Toronto. There was a guy there named Stan. Stan was money. Stan tried so hard to be social, but didn't quite know what he was doing, which often led to hilarity. Here are a few examples of Stan being Stan. Upon learning a coworker was Polish, he said, "You're a Polak?" Then told her every anti-Polish joke he knew. He genuinely thought she would find it funny, and he was laughing the whole time. After not getting a promotion after his review, since there were no positions for him to move into, nor was he anywhere near qualified, he created a petition to have our sales manager fired, and went around to everyone in each department and asked them to sign it. Nobody signed it except for him. My personal favorite was at a company barbecue. Stan and one of the guys from shipping decided to do mushrooms. The barbecue was at the president of the company's house, so this was wildly inappropriate. After about 45 minutes, he was going around from person to person shouting, "Go G-Men!" to the guys. He was a New York Giants fan and the season had just started, and asked the girls to dance with him. He then told a racist joke to the 65-year-old VP and laughed so hard at his own joke that he started drooling. I miss that guy sometimes. He made work a lot more interesting. A guy at my work, let's call him Roger, claimed that you can get high-octane racing fuel by mixing 89 octane and 93 octane in your gas tank. Roger told me on my first day here 7 years ago that if I wanted to know any good Asian massage parlors nearby, he'd recommend the good ones with the happy endings. First day at work. He used to watch webcam girls from the Philippines on his desktop at work, stripping, doing other unsavory things, etc. Then he went over and married one, and now she lives here. She's half his age and probably less than half his size. He took a Filipino coworker to see his buddy's band at a local bar. Turns out it was a biker bar, frequented by a lot of some kind of Aryan Nation-style bikers. The coworker told me that there were signs up extolling the virtues of white supremacy, and that everyone was glaring at him the entire time he was in the bar. When he went to point it out, Roger just laughed and said, "I come here all the time, it's no big deal." Roger snores through meetings. Roger at one time had some kind of narcolepsy or something, and would fall asleep in his cube. Coworkers frequently threw things at him to wake him up. The weird thing is, he's actually a pretty nice guy. If you got arrested or something and called him at 3 a.m. to come bail you out, he'd do it, even if he'd only met you once for like 10 minutes. He's very friendly and sociable. He's just really strange. I used to work with Brian, about 230 pounds of pure software geek. He had a full beard like Grizzly Adams. Baths and showers were not on his list of important things to do. Once, we flew him to the client site to help solve a pesky problem. I reminded him to dress for the occasion. I greeted him at the front lobby and was shocked to see him with a collared shirt that had never been ironed and his tie tied directly to his neck. Not under the collar, just wrapped around his neck. When I mentioned it to him, he said, "If that's my only problem, then we're in good shape." A direct quote from my colleague. "I woke up on an old mattress next to my boyfriend's brother in an abandoned church wearing a bikini in Tuscaloosa. And that was the first time I'd ever done Xanax." She also brought a pink briefcase full of adult toys to work at a law firm because she had an adult toy party to host later in the evening. She lived in a house that didn't have a kitchen. She has 2 pet squirrels and her husband plays in an awful nu metal band. She also crushes up pills on her desk with her keys and snorts them when she thinks no one's looking. We have a one-upper at work who is a gold mine. I can only recall his most recent outlandish claims, which were that he's been in 19 weddings this year, not attended, but been in, and that he had an overweight friend on the top floor of the World Trade Center on 9/11 who made it down to safety and now runs 15 miles a day. I was working in an open concept office where we used an instant messenger to communicate. One day, working late, it's only myself and that guy. He disappeared for like 20 minutes and then came back, but I didn't notice much. He types to me, "Hey, do you like my haircut?" And I look over and he's just locked eyes with me after shaving his head with a razor in the bathroom. I used to work with a guy who was an excellent engineer, but frequently subject to fits of rage when things didn't go well with what he was working on. Picture the scene. Typical cubicle farm with engineers hard at work, and the only sound you hear is the sound of tapping on keyboards. Suddenly, the sound of hysterical angry cursing and someone slamming their keyboard on the desk repeatedly. Everyone leaps to their feet in alarm like a bunch of prairie dogs, scanning the room for the source of the noise. Almost at once, everyone realizes that it's just Tim having another tantrum, smiles at each other, and quietly sits back down. Later, our secretary walks over to his office with a new keyboard, puts it on his desk without a word, and then walks back. A woman at my company has decided instead of paying off her student loans, she'll simply get more degrees. She's 40 plus on her 4th master's degree and does nothing but complain about schoolwork all day. Probably at least $100K in debt. No comprendo. That guy at my current company is John. John is a conspiracy theorist. He believes that the anti-theft RFID things at the doors of Walmart are designed to scan your credit cards and the metal strip in money in your wallet to see how much money you have to spend. John talks about secret CIA trains that run in tunnels under the city. John used to work for a cell phone company and tells us stories of how he installed scanners on light poles on nearly every major road to scan for a unique identifier that all vehicles emit for government tracking purposes. John believes the building we work in has chemicals applied to the HVAC system, which is making us more compliant with government programs. John will never use his ATM card to buy meals because he doesn't want the government to track what he eats. John calls a $20 bill a yuppie meal coupon. I actually thought that one was funny. Ice cream is called whipped lard. Eating at Panda Express is eating an endangered species meal. John once told me about his collection of different sized rubber gloves he has at home. He has a pair that go up to his shoulders for cleaning the bathroom. John also believed that all major leaders of the world belong to the same family tree. Also, our building has anti-earthquake devices attached to it, so the building shakes gently every so often. John claimed that the shakes were the CIA shooting mind control beams up from their underground trains. John believes our secretary at the front desk keeps a log of when John entered and left the building. Most days, John would ride the train to work, and every so often he would say, "Better stay indoors, they're spraying again." Spraying mind control drugs, that is. Sadly, John quit a few months ago. On the day he quit, he sat in his car in the parking garage for 4 hours before he worked up the guts to call his boss on the phone and quit. He instructed that his desk be boxed up and sent to his home. No one has heard from John since. My good friend Paul works in the warehouse at our company. He's gotten into every sort of trouble imaginable. He tipped a towering stack of construction materials over the back of our yard's wall. He slammed the forklift into one of our delivery trucks when he dozed off. He's gone to the wrong construction site 100 miles away from the intended delivery site. But he's a genuinely good-hearted guy, and the company's had mercy on him. He's still with us. Tons of funny stories always coming out of the warehouse from this guy. My personal favorite? Paul's an Iron Maiden fan, and he's always singing while he works. Well, one day, Paul decides to sing a parody version of Caught Somewhere in Time, with the clever lyrics of Caught with Shaft in Hand. So he's just belting out these inappropriate lyrics as he moseys over towards the will call counter. Who should walk in but one of the sales directors giving a tour of the warehouse to a new female salesperson. Paul rounds the corner, continuing the chorus with "Caught with shaft in hand," and bumps directly into the sales director. He plays it off like nothing happened, shakes his hand and the hand of the new employee, who were both giving him odd looks. To add to the hilarity, when they finally depart, we notice his fly's been down the entire time. I'm not even sure where to start. We have that family working in our warehouse. It's a mother and her son and daughter. The son was recently fired for reasons that I'll get to in a moment. They're as trashy as you can possibly be. Think of all the stereotypes and you'll have thought of them. So here's the laundry list. The mother, married to a guy that has dementia and 13 stents in his heart. They filed medical bankruptcy 3 times. Most recently, her husband tried to end himself but ended up only shooting himself in the shoulder. She always wears t-shirts with sayings that she thinks are clever. To really put the icing on the trash cake, she smokes Pall Malls. She and her children commute to work together, but every month their car gets repossessed, so they end up getting a new crappy vehicle. No one is sure how they pull that off. What, with all the bankruptcies and other bad credit issues? She watches every reality show and wants to talk about them with anyone who will listen, and doesn't understand when you tell her that you don't watch whatever it is she's talking about. So You Think You Can Dance is a prime example. The daughter. She smoked through all 4 of her pregnancies, claiming that her mother smoked when she was pregnant with her and she turned out fine. She lives in a trailer but gets peeved if you call it a trailer because it's on a permanent foundation. She also has a Tourette's type head twitch and blinking thing going on. She has no neck, just a head that suddenly becomes shoulders. She's constantly broke, but spends every available penny on sending her 2 daughters to beauty pageants, and then makes everyone in the company look at the pageant photos. Surprisingly, they've actually won a few. I would hate to see what the rest of the competition look like. We know she has some sort of psychosis because she has to be medicated at all times. If not, she sees and hears things that aren't there. This has led to her hiding under her desk screaming and crying. She also has some other medical condition that causes her to always be on her period. We know this because she makes us uncomfortable by talking about it all the time. Once, her husband showed up at our office, and while he was waiting for her, he told us that if he had known how crazy she was, he never would have married her, let alone had kids. To boot, she has 4 wiener dogs, one of which she claims is an attack dog that actually fended off a burglar. It was a very elaborate story that ended with a wiener dog launching himself off of the couch and into the burglar's face, drawing blood. No one was apprehended, so if you see anyone with the telltale signs of a weenie dog attack, please notify the authorities. The son. He always has the worst gas known to man. He was inside of a shipping container unloading products with some of our other employees when he kept farting, which ultimately made all of them throw up. It was ghastly. While talking to him one day, he stuck his hand down the back of his pants and said, "Watch this." He then stuck his finger under his mom's nose and told her to sniff. He'd apparently stuck his finger in his butt because his mom threw up. He then repeated the process with his sister before she could be warned. He had to miss a month of work due to a riding lawnmower explosion. He claimed he had been blowed up. He lives in a trailer on his mom's property, but doesn't have electricity, so they just run extension cords from her trailer. He had a boil on his arm that was believed to be a staph infection, and his mother lanced it with a box cutter. It was disgusting. He had a bad habit of wrecking our forklift, and one day drove it off the loading dock. The forks went into the asphalt about 10 inches, and we had to get a special wrecker to come pull it out. A short time after that, he backed into one of the support beams in the warehouse, knocking it completely out from under the roof. The beam was at least 30 feet long, and it's amazing that no one was injured. Sometimes I would find him sleeping hidden behind pallets in our warehouse during work hours. Eventually, his sister ratted him out for being drunk on the job all the time, which explained all the forklift mishaps. When confronted by his mother about the drinking, he went crazy and tried to beat her and his sister with a baseball bat. Other employees intervened and we called the cops. He took off on foot and was apprehended later that day, vowing to get even with all of us for calling the cops. His mom didn't want us to tell them, but whatever. He was wielding a bat. Needless to say, he doesn't work here anymore. There's so much more, but those are just some of the highlights that I can think of off the top of my head. We'll call my coworker from a few years ago Ed. Ed was a British man living in the US. He had pictures of the Bush family as well as a picture of the Queen in his cubicle. He was also a bodybuilder and ate a strict diet of small meats numerous times a day. He had a lot of food pre-made and delivered to him, and he'd bring it into work. It was very common to see Ed eating, and none of us really cared since we knew it was part of his overall workout regimen. He'd often microwave single potatoes, snacks, leftovers, etc. But then there was that day Ed didn't know his fish had spoiled, and he threw it into the microwave. The office smelled horrible for the rest of the day. There was also that one time he came over to my desk with a bleeding face. He said he'd nicked himself while shaving and asked me to clean him up and bandage him. He brought alcohol, prep pads, and ointment and a band-aid. He also told me that once he wanted to have my babies, which was confusing because he was gay. I tolerated all of this because I was lonely and had a crush on him that I didn't understand and never admitted until now. There's this one guy who seems nice, but he's really quiet. He basically sits on his computer all day and browses Reddit. Whenever he's given a project, he does it quickly and goes right back to browsing. He probably thinks that we don't realize or care that he hardly does any real work. But believe me, we all know. Our guy only recently got fired. One of the conclusions we had eventually reached about him was that he was completely incapable of feeling empathy, which is not really the best person to have as your main customer support representative. But that was what he'd been hired to be. He was mostly frightening in that position because he never stopped smiling or being cheerful, even if the customer was freaking out at him or if he was bored out of his mind. This in itself doesn't cause for alarm, but he was a strange dude. On his second week in the office, he found out that there weren't any dentists that provide ozone therapists in our city. So he took 2 days off and drove to a nearby city in order to get his teeth ozoned. He would ask, "How was your weekend?" in the most interested voice you could imagine. Inflection perfect with Tobias Funke asking, "How are you?" You could tell him, sure, with him exploding into laughter at every event that happened, no matter what it was. If you asked him how his weekend was, he would be extremely sure it was a great weekend, but then wouldn't be able to recall exactly what he did, ever. After a month of working there, he started complaining that our insurance company, which he wouldn't receive benefits for until he had been there for 3 months, didn't cover his ozone therapy. He kept a steamer crock-pot thing in the break room and steamed a mixture of carrots and spinach every single morning, which he would then eat out of a bowl at around 10 a.m. The smell was atrocious, and everyone complained about it the first day he did it, until we found out someone was making that horrible smell on purpose. He called it borscht for unknown reasons, which our Russian salesman nearly flipped out over every time the word came up. He was kind of an idiot when it came to support as well. We have a support ticket system that handles all of our clients for all of the different services we offer. He actually had copy pasta that he was putting into every single ticket with a lot of idiotic troubleshooting steps that didn't apply to 75% of our clientele. When someone called in to report our support center was down, he asked them to submit a support ticket about it. He was overall a bit of a know-it-all, being very good at selling clients things that they didn't need and would later complain they spent thousands of dollars on. By the time he was fired, clients would call in and immediately ask to be forwarded to sales, even for stupid support issues, just so they wouldn't have to talk to him. Not as bad as some people's that guy, but by the time he was fired, everyone in the office was being driven up the wall. Our number of support tickets submitted this past month are at 50% of what they were at last year, after a steady increase for the rest of the year, and I'm fairly certain it's his fault. I will say this, don't discount that guy too quickly. An old friend of mine used to share stories about a coworker that would always say and do wildly inappropriate things, much along the lines of the original poster's examples, and including picking food off of said friend's plate in the break room, uninvited of course. My friend was nice to the guy anyway, despite the annoyances, and considered him a friend. Anyway, long story short, my friend died suddenly one day after he'd quit his job with that guy a while back. The guy was on his Facebook friends and ended up producing quite an outpouring of feelings and sympathy with the family and friends of the deceased. He would note every time he drove by my friend's old house or anything, and not obnoxiously, but in a very genuine and caring way. He was very kind and supportive to all of us that were grieving. He obviously was a very caring and very friendly individual, just totally socially inept. The moral of the story? Some of those guys are just totally weird, but some are actually really nice people that just don't know how to interact well. Give them a chance and you might make an invaluable friend for life. This guy was far more loyal than the trite normal people my friend had worked with, some of which made brief and non-sentimental remarks on his death. That guy seemed to be the only one that was really truly affected by this. Oh man. Last year, I worked with the most intense guy ever. He was ex-military going back to school for his third undergrad or something. On one particular day while we were listening to NPR, a story came on about someone getting shot during a home robbery. Apparently in South Dakota, there's a law which states if someone breaks into your house, you can shoot them dead and not go to jail. I simply stated that I don't think I would be able to kill a person. And he screams in my face, covering me with spittle, "But it's your right!" It became kind of a meme for the other interns. In another instance, he went on a rage to me about how dumb women are, and I'm a woman, and that their only purposes are for breeding and feeding. I got peeved, slam on the brakes, kick him out of the truck, and tell him he's in timeout and I'll be back when he's not going to be a jerk. Best memory ever. Made even better since we were on an Indian reservation and he was not very fond of natives. There's a man at the grocery store I work at. We'll call him Monty because that's his name. I hate this man. He embodies everything that is wrong with society and fills so many stereotypes it isn't even funny. He's from New Jersey. Therefore, in his mind, he must be a mobster. He acts this way all the time. To everyone. Heavy Brooklyn accent, even though he's never been to New York, self-admittedly. Unnecessarily argumentative and overly confrontational about anything. He acts like people asking him to do things like his job is an affront to him on par with assaulting his mother and kicking the Pope in the balls. This man is built like a 3/4 full sack of crap with thinning hair, zero charisma, and yet he still hits on the female minors we have working here. Did I mention this man is about 70 years old?
What do you miss about being young? No daily body aches or pain. My childhood house was on a huge hill. I used to stand on the top of the hill in my snowsuit and just jump. Anything over 8 inches of snow, I would just slide all the way down. I think about this often, especially as time keeps turning. Yeah, I feel this one. I get random knee pain every so often. Not sure if it's from working out wrong or just getting older, but legit knocks me out for like 3 days or so. I look like I'm walking with an invisible cast on my whole leg. I miss my hairline. As someone who's losing their hair at 16, I envy you. Oh man, where do I start? Saturday morning cartoons, being carried to bed after falling asleep late on the couch, highly interested in astronauts, space, and dinosaurs. Every kid was. Everything seemed bigger. The small fort you built was gigantic. The skinny high school student that seemed like he was 25 years old. All teachers were old AF. The toilet in your school felt like a scary dungeon. Playing in the mud with your siblings and cousins. while your parents were screaming at your face for doing it, but you all knew you were going to do it again. You just knew everything would be okay because your parents were always taking care of you. And if they were angry with you, you could always just go to your grandparents. And of course, falling asleep in the back seat of the van while on your way to grandma's. The sound and feel of the off-ramp would wake me up just as we were getting home. Those were the days. Having more energy and my body not aching. Dude, energy. I could just wake up and my youth propelled me right into my day. Now I'm in bed for an hour past my alarm. I need 2 cups of coffee just to get moving. My wrists hurt after decades of using my hands repetitively for work. I get hot flashes, I'm unmotivated. I do things because I have to, not because I want to. As I get older myself, I'm curious how many people feel the lack of energy are also people that aren't very active. I think we underestimate how having a healthier lifestyle can really make us feel better. I say this as someone who has recently started taking their health more seriously. And man, I do feel so much better. Living in a world where it felt like the future was going to be better instead of worse. Honestly, as a 15-year-old, I gotta say I don't really think the future is that bright. Due to things like social media, we're being overloaded with negative information like climate change, oceans being polluted, inflation, high house prices, unemployment, and a lot more. Even really young kids, around 8 or 9 years old, are brought in contact with these topics, which is concerning in my opinion. I'm in my early 60s, and in the last 25 years, the media has been bought up by 6 different entities. There's so little difference in what they're all saying, and real investigative journalism has been replaced by PR releases. I've had to go to some YouTubers and some Substack people to get any meaningful news. On the bright side, I quit yelling at my television since I quit watching anything news related. I can relate, I rarely watch big news outlets. I watch people on YouTube and streaming services to cut through all the crap for me. The complete lack of responsibility. Yeah, I missed those days where my biggest problem was having to read out loud. But you can't know what a non-problem that is in the moment. Because back then, it was a big deal. As were middle school politics, failing a test, etc. It takes perspective to understand fully, which you don't have when you're young. Like seeing a toddler cry over a dropped ice cream cone. It's literally the worst thing in their whole life. I'm middle-aged and I greatly prefer it. Personally, my give a crap meter is broken and I have tools, experience, and perspective to actually deal with things. Either way, being a person can be tough at any age. Thinking that everyone I met and talked to was my best friend. This is quickly becoming my issue. I made friends so easily in middle school. Now everyone I made friends with is leaving, or I can't find new ones to talk to. If you need help with this, I would say join online communities if you can. Play video games with people online, or just try to do something new that involves people. This is the honest truth, but some of my best friends are people that I didn't grow up with and I met online. And yes, if you're curious, I have met them in real life. Not having to work. Oh man, what I would give to have 2 months off a year again. Being able to slam half a buffalo chicken style pizza with no consequences. Half? I know, what a lightweight. I miss the optimism and promise of a brighter future. Nowadays, it's all about holding on to what I have. Brain plasticity. It was so easy to quickly learn large amounts of information in my teens and early 20s. Now I'm almost 40, my learning capacity has slowed down significantly. I'm in my 40s. One thing that I've done and I still keep on doing is studying. It's like working out. So in my younger years, I had a very broad range in IT, from storage, servers, networks, OS, etc. So I've been studying that every year, 1 to 3 subjects. This year it was firewalls, I got certified, OS also got certified, and now about to do project management. Last year was a different OS only. Year before that was storage. Anyhow, you get the idea. I got 4 kids too, so it's a hard challenge. The takeaway is to never give yourself a break. Once you get stagnant, it's hard to come back. Since you are almost in your 40s, I suggest you take something easy to start and continue. I'm also a proponent of lifelong learning. I completed a degree in programming and web development during the pandemic, and I'm also planning on going back to school within the next 3 years to start working towards a series of degrees in entomology. I just accepted a job offer from a company that is willing to train me to do software testing and technical writing. It just sucks knowing that my next venture into graduate school won't be with the brain I had during my first PhD program, or even the one I had 5 years ago. I can still synthesize information just fine, but my capacity to learn information quickly and retain it just isn't as vast as it was when I was younger. It just now takes longer and requires more repetition to learn the same amount of information. It's 4 things for me: collagen, energy, motivation, and not feeling like time is running out. To be honest, time running out is the biggest thing I think about, and this is because I constantly compare it to things I want to do. For example, if I want to write a manga and get it turned into an anime someday, I heard that it can take up to 2 to 5 years to make 1 season of an anime. So that means I should have started selling a successful manga years ago. Boredom. Before Apple put computer interfaces in our pockets, phones were mostly just phones. Boredom was common and also led to a lot of new experiences and serendipity. The lack of experiential context, aka not being jaded AF, and this innate desire to just use my body for things. I used to have an inner drive that needed to be expanded, or I felt like I was going crazy. My innate desire is now attuned to relaxation instead. Mine's simple: my parents. Oof, I relate. I miss ya, Grandpa. Getting rock throbbing, well, you know, if you're a guy. Mostly a working pancreas. I'm 30, but being skinnier and my skin. Seeing aging on my face is hard to deal with. I also miss my old melons. I feel like mentally and life-wise I'm in a much better place now than I ever was. I just miss my physical youth. Oh my god, do you feel like it hit you really quickly? I always had it in my head that aging started at maybe 40, but I feel like my looks completely changed from like 29ish onward, and I agree, it's hard to deal with. I miss my old melons too. I'd love to have my physical youth back. I guess being creative and being naturally skinny. Yeah, same. I miss my waist and my motivation to be creative all of the time. I used to write a lot, and I also loved to dance, but then puberty hit me and I gained a freaking ton of weight. And I got bullied relentlessly for it by everyone, so that sucked. However, I would say I don't really miss my childhood. I now have more freedom in decision making, and I don't have to go to the loud, overstimulating family or friend meetings anymore. Wait a minute, this person said they stopped dancing and writing because puberty and gaining weight? I feel like those are 2 things that you could still do easily. But I guess maybe the bullying played a big factor in it. 20-year-old me. I work at 7 a.m., so if I stop drinking at 6 a.m., I'll be good to go. Me now. How dare you suggest starting a movie at 8 p.m.? Being ignorant to how awful and hurtful the world can be. I guess I'm lucky. I'm 36 and I don't miss a damn thing. I'm better off physically, mentally, and financially than I've ever been. Beautiful wife and family. Self-employed. Life is good. Same here. Almost 10 years older than you, and I'm better, fitter, smarter, richer, happier than I've ever been. My friendships, career, marriage, body, and wallet are all much better at this age. No, I don't look 23, but that's okay. Preferably even. I find that people who are convinced that you get fat, frumpy, lonely, isolated, and achy at age XYZ are living in ways that reinforce that mindset. Yeah, I would have to agree with that last statement. I personally know a lot of people that have the ability to better their lives, but choose not to. And they often end up grumpy. That full-fledged confidence I had in myself. I was 100% sure that I knew absolutely everything and acted accordingly. Yes, it was absolutely obnoxious for those around me, but the confidence of 18-year-old me was unmatched. Now, I find this one funny because I was 100% this way. I thought I was going to win an Oscar and be making blockbuster films by the age of 25. Oh, how full of myself I was. I still want to do those things, but I'm a bit more realistic on how hard it is to get to that point. Also, being a content creator, I have some younger viewers that think like this now, and it's funny to see that confidence, or better, ignorance, knowing that I was once the same way. My metabolism. Just so you know, if you drag yourself to the gym a few days a week and put on some muscle, you'll raise your metabolism. Not just from the exercise itself. Once you build some muscle, you burn more calories at rest too. There are a lot of 50-year-olds at the gym who look and feel great. It just doesn't come free anymore. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if any of that's true, but I can say working out does make you feel better. When you're in school and it sucks, you can think to yourself that it's just a temporary ordeal on a way to something better. And there's a sort of general idea of the path you're on. When you're in a crappy job, you can quit and look for another crappy job, but there's nothing other than jobs that you're heading towards for the next half century or so. Even if you're in a good job, sooner or later, you just get more stuff piled on you until it becomes a bad job, at least in my experience. I agree and disagree with this. I did have a super chill job before becoming a content creator, but over time it beat me down and it made me question what I was doing with my life. Nothing is more motivating, in my opinion at least, than seeing the years fly by and seeing that you aren't any closer to your goals. It'll make you reevaluate your life and desires. As for the getting a good job or sooner or later it'll become a bad job, I don't think I agree with that. I really enjoy my current job over any other job that I've had. And if there's things I don't like about it, I try to find ways to improve it. I don't know, if I'm still doing this in a few years, maybe I'll think differently, but right now, I think it's pretty awesome. Waking up and knowing that I could realistically end up doing something completely unexpected that night. I could end up at a concert, some crazy road trip, a festival we just discovered, etc. That and the music. Life is so boring now. I technically still do all the fun stuff I used to, but after 2020, I'm just super anxious about everything. The simplicity of life. When I was a kid, a perfect day kind of looked like this. Wake up when I want, spend the morning at either the library or the comic store, go home for lunch, head out with some buddies to get up to no good for a few hours, head home for dinner, read some books/comics I picked up earlier that day, then finish the day with a gaming session on the console. I didn't know any better. That was just life. Now, if I have a day like that, I need to plan ahead like 2 weeks in advance. Clear my entire schedule, turn off my phone for the day, make sure all the meals are prepped ahead of time, or go out to a fast food joint, and then I can have a day that kind of resembles that. I need to put in the mental energy and planning just to have a real day off. And I don't have kids, so I get to do that every once in a while. If I did have kids, I would never have a day off. That's a 24/7 job. I can't even imagine it. The idea of stressing out and planning my whole day off is counterintuitive to the concept of it. But if I don't do it that way, it's not gonna happen. You know, I can totally relate to this. I am a workaholic, it feels like, and if I do have a day off where I'm not working the job that actually pays me money, I'm still doing something along the lines of like writing for a comic book or trying to write a short film or just streaming. I can't really remember the last day I just had a day off to do nothing. It definitely needs to be planned. The ability to enjoy things without thinking about the inner workings of things. Nowadays, it's hard to really enjoy anything without thinking about the people behind it, the corners they cut, the agenda they're trying to push, etc. It's really hard to innocently enjoy anything anymore the older I get because the mythicism of everything kind of fades away in the understanding that someone is behind this, and it sucks. Knees. Honestly though, I'm 33 and I'm now in the washed up athlete bucket. I miss the days where I could go ham and wake up the next day feel like nothing happened. Sleeping. Years of shift work and being emergency response for stuff has left me with the inability to sleep properly. My woman says the butterfly in my spirit animal has given up because of how lightly I sleep and how instantly I'm ready for action if disturbed. It's a real bastard. Not much, truthfully. I'm a better person now overall, in better shape, figured out school, and I'm married with 2 wonderful kids. My hobbies are still there, but now I get to share them. Okay, maybe I miss my old Saturday morning cartoons. Looking at you, Reboot and Beast Wars. Dude, I tried watching Beast Wars as an adult, and I couldn't get past the cringe dialogue in the first few episodes. I remember loving that show as a kid, but it's so dated now and I don't want to try watching it again and ruin any of the nostalgia I have left. Saturday morning cartoons were dope though, definitely programmed us to look forward to the weekends. I am so glad that somebody mentioned the show Reboot, because for anybody that doesn't know, basically it was like a 3D cartoon. But the craziest thing about Reboot was the ending was in the name of the show. Spoiler alert for a show that's over 20 years old, but the finale of the show has all the characters die because the computer they're in gets rebooted. Thinking about that as I got older, I was just like, dude, that was pretty morbid for a kid's show. Wild stuff. Perfect eyesight. As someone who got glasses during the pandemic, because I thought it was a product of panic attacks, I will say the clarity that I have with them on is insane. Really made me feel my age for that moment. Absolutely not giving a flying crap about playing video games all day, every day for weeks. And with the boys. Nowadays, me and the boys are busy with work, and when it's not work, it's our romantic partners. Haven't gamed with the boys for more than an afternoon in years. Being able to make friends because, hey, we're similar ages. Even in my 20s, I would go out into a different city and just blend in and party with a gang of similar age strangers. No problem. The joy of Pokemon. I mean, now at 29, I still play Pokemon, but I have vivid and joyful memories of playing Pokemon Yellow in the car coming home from my grandparents on my Game Boy. The streetlights kept me being able to play the game. The feeling of pure happiness when I got myself, by myself, through the forest on my way to challenge Brock. Dude, same. I feel this completely as I am a similar age to you. Pokemon Go was also so good a few years back. Lack of worries. I missed the days when my worry was if my crush was going to notice me that day. Now I worry about having enough money to one day buy a house and support future kids. Having time to clean my house, eating healthy to avoid health issues, doing well in my career, while maintaining friendships. It's not necessarily what I miss about being young, but as a kid, I always wished that I was 16, 18, 21, pivotal ages in a person's life. But now that I've been all of those ages, I'd give up so much to go back 10 years where life was just innocent. 2 big reasons or timelines. Being under 13. I really miss how simple life was. Nothing but playing video games, hanging out with friends, going fishing, and playing in the woods. Just good old-fashioned kid stuff. Every day was a little adventure. After 13 and on through college, life definitely wasn't as simple, but you still have your whole life ahead of you to look forward to. The possibilities for future are limitless. Now at 37, I look at life as being middle-aged. I live a great life, but I definitely long for my youth. Our parents are facing their morality, and I look at life as being closer to the end than the beginning now. It sounds morbid, but it's the reality of things. My friends are fat, bald, or both. People have been married and divorced, including myself. People have died, pets have died, and we move on. Life just doesn't have the magic it did when we were young, and there isn't a nostalgia rabbit hole satisfying enough to truly take me back. Well, damn. Now I'm depressed. Why not end the video talking about what I miss about being young? I heard a lot of people talking about their looks and how they feel physically. I have to say, I don't mind the way I look right now. My mustache actually looks pretty great compared to when I was younger, and my hairstyle has definitely improved. If I eat healthy and work out regularly, I feel pretty great. But I think the one thing I really miss about being young was the simplicity of everything. You never had to defend why you liked something or why you thought something was the best thing ever. You didn't have a million questions on why your crush didn't like you. It was because she didn't like you or think you were cute enough. Simple as that. Whereas today, you end up asking yourself, did they not find me attractive? Was it because they didn't like my job or where I live? Was it my laugh? Maybe she didn't like the way I dressed. Maybe it was because I said something that she didn't agree with. And so on and so on. But one thing that I didn't see on this list today was the lack of choices. I miss when I only had one video game to play because I became the greatest player at that game. I was doing speed runs of games before I even knew what speed runs were. I came from a family that couldn't buy new video games all the time, so I got one and I played it until you couldn't play the game anymore. Nowadays, great games are being released for free in hopes that you make in-app purchases. So many amazing games come out now that I beat them once and I move on to the next because I don't have time to collect every trophy in the games anymore. Oh, there is 10 different alternate endings to this game? I guess I'll watch the other 9 on YouTube. There used to be this thrill that came with playing the same game over and over again. Now that is definitely something that I wish I could experience again.
Divorce lawyers of Reddit, what's the worst way you've seen someone screw over their spouse? My uncle represented this guy getting a divorce from his wife of 15 years. Super toxic breakup, and they split everything 50-50. Even the land that the house they lived in sat upon. Well, she decided to build a house right behind the other house. Mind you, this was a lot of land, probably 200 yards separating both home sites. So the back of the houses faced each other. The house gets built and my uncle gets a call from his client asking about the legality of a situation he'd gotten himself into. Apparently, his ex-wife would spend a lot of time in her backyard, so he saw her all the time. What he did was buy a female dog and name it the same name as his ex-wife. Anytime he would let his dog back in from her being outside, he would yell, "Susan, you B-word, get in here!" He would also yell if she was peeing on the flowers. "Susan, you B-word, quit peeing on the flowers!" Or, "Susan, you B-word, quit digging in the dirt." The ex-wife called the cops on him a couple of times, but there was nothing they could do because the dog was registered under the name of Susan, and she was in fact a female dog. So there you go. The couple separated 10 years ago, but didn't officially divorce until a couple years ago. She was going to get his house, so he burned it down, then faxed her the transfer of ownership forms. He might be going to jail for arson though. I worked at a law firm that was subpoenaed as part of a divorce between a partner at the firm and a partner at another major law firm. The woman issued more than 70 subpoenas to banks, firms, investment companies, you name it. She was convinced he had squirreled away $20+ million overseas behind her back. It got so bad that she dug up receipts from 25 years ago to try to put together his grand conspiracy puzzle. In the end, after she racked up $1.5 million in legal fees and 7 different lawyers, the judge said that this is ridiculous. There was no conspiracy, and you're not entitled to a portion of this phantom $20 million. Mind you, this was a major law firm partner who was acting this way. She made millions per year in her career, but she apparently lost her mind. Bad separation. Wife filed a restraining order on the husband. Very common. Wasn't a terrible guy, but not great either. A year into the divorce, his mother was dying. He asked his sister to speak with his ex-wife and asked to bring the kids to see her in the hospital before she died. The wife never did. Instead, she went to the court and said he violated the restraining order by trying to contact her. You can't contact someone through another party. He admitted to it and explained the situation, but was found in breach of the order. His mother died while he was locked up, and the wife never brought the kids to see her. Story from my parents who are lawyers. So throughout the divorce proceedings, there was a car that was a huge point of contention between the husband and wife. After months and months of saying he would never let the wife have the car, the husband concedes in exchange for something great, like one of their summer houses. It turns out he'd been driving the car for 3 hours every day in a big loop around the city, putting thousands and thousands of miles on it, basically making it worthless. The amount of planning and spite that went into that was amazing. I did some consulting work for 2 divorce attorneys when I was in grad school. Their client was a career airline pilot. His wife worked part-time, so there was a huge income disparity. It was an ugly divorce. During the process, but before the final decree, tax time rolled around. The wife's attorney calls my guys and says, her accountant just called. If they can just share their W-2s and file jointly, they each stand to save about $8,000 over filing separately. My guys took that info to the husband. He says, "Screw her. Losing $8,000 is going to be way worse for her than it will for me." Cold as ice, man. Over here in the Netherlands, most legal costs are paid for by the government if your income is below a certain threshold. In practice, this means that if one of the spouses in a divorce has little to no income and the other one has a normal income, the one with the normal income will have to pay a lot if the process drags on. Considering there are plenty of ways to drag it on, I've seen cases approach ridiculous amounts of billable hours. There is a catch to this, however. Your lawyer is paid a set amount if he or she is paid by the government. However, should the money you receive after a divorce or whatever exceed a certain number, you're expected to pay your own lawyer, which is the reason we still keep track of the hours in these cases. So this one woman who thought she was screwing over her ex-husband by dragging the divorce over multiple years got a payout of 40,000 euros by the end of it. Unfortunately for her, she had to surrender most of that straight back in lawyer costs. There was a certain sense of justice in there. Also proves time and again that when there is conflict, the only true winners are usually the lawyers. Banker here. Had heaps of situations where joint overdraft/credit card comes up just before the divorce to absolutely surprise one of the parties. Drained down to zero, of course. Especially bad when it's students or young kids who find themselves heartbroken after the breakup and with debt they can't afford. I had a guy who was married to a woman who slept with another guy, had that other guy's baby, and never told the husband. Then, for other reasons, they start filing divorce proceedings. A paternity test is done, the husband finds out the kid isn't his, and the courts rule that he still has to pay child support because it's in the best interests of the kid. I handled a divorce between a wife who was a teacher and a husband who was a CVS cashier. I represented the wife. For all intents and purposes, the wife was the breadwinner of the family, and she supported herself, her husband, and their 2 children. I should note, one of the children was severely autistic and required intensive and expensive rehab and education. During the process of the divorce, the husband, living alone, sued the wife, caring for both children, for temporary spousal support. He met all the statutory guidelines to receive it, but it just came off as slimy. At the day of the hearing, the judge reviewed all of the facts and spent 20 minutes tearing the husband a new one. He called him a vile creature that was everything wrong with society. The judge then told us that his hands were tied and that he was forced to grant the spousal support, but he let everyone know how little he thought of the husband. As we were leaving the court, the husband just kept saying to my crying client, "Just like Goodfellas, screw you, pay me." It was literally humanity at its worst. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but being a banker, I get to delve into the personal lives of people, and this is what a customer had told me. Well, basically, the divorce was cut and dry, but as a professional, that's not my business why. But I'm worried about his financials though. My guy was the breadwinner in the house. He was a construction foreman, I believe, so he was the guy planning, paying, and watching his employees. He was great. Apparently, his wife wanted everything. But the thing that ticked him off the most was the fact that she took the boat, his boat that he had purchased before ever meeting her. The funny thing is though, she can't afford anything to move the boat with, like a truck. So he had to legitimately move his boat with his truck to some place she was staying at and just leave it. He lost his boat. He asked me at the end how old I was. I tell him 21. He told me never to get married. I'll get to keep all my stuff at the end. I saw a future ex-wife fight vigorously over disability benefits of a not yet retired career military guy. She had a new guy to bankroll her and legal fees were nothing to her. So she dragged out asset division and divorce proceedings for months over not yet accrued disability benefits of her soon-to-be ex-husband. Total amount to which she would have been entitled? About $400. That is before Supreme Court decided disability benefits are not marital property. It was some very petty bull. Wife and husband number 1 divorce with a child. Wife gets custody of child. Husband number 1 pays child support. Wife marries husband number 2. Husband number 2 adopts the child. Husband number 1 is no longer on the hook for child support as husband number 2 is now legally the father. Wife and husband number 2 get a divorce. Because of the adoption, husband number 2 has to pay child support for the child. Wife remarries husband number 1. Now the child lives with husband number 1, the biological father, and husband number 2, the adoptive father, still has to pay child support. My wife is a divorce attorney, so she told me about this one. The couple was still living together during the divorce process, but separate bedrooms and all that. Anytime the husband would buy a snack like chips or crackers, he'd come home to his soon-to-be ex-wife, who would smash the bag until the snack was dust but never open it. So anytime he'd go to eat a snack that he thought was new, he'd only end up disappointed. He was not awarded a restraining order or anything for this either. He was super mad about the dust snacks, however. I was a clerk of the court and we handled a lot of divorce files. You wouldn't believe how many people submit nude pictures of their soon-to-be exes into court to record as evidence. Not because the pictures are relevant in any way to divorce proceedings, but simply to humiliate them. Court files, unless sealed by the judge, are public record, so anyone who cares to look can access the court file and all the exhibits. Family court is the most depressing division. Don't send nudes to people. The husband cheated on his wife and she found out. One day she went back to their old house and put shrimp in all the curtain rods. The husband, who was trying to sell the house, couldn't figure out where the smell was coming from. He ends up selling it at a massive loss and below value due to the smell. The wife was the one who ended up buying it. The husband was a pretty good dude, as he was a good dad to the kids and was a good provider for the family. He wanted to get the divorce over with as amicably as possible, but the wife, who had actually cheated on him, wanted everything, including the guy's soul apparently. She got the house, custody of the kids, and alimony, but they both ended up racking up thousands of extra dollars in attorney's fees over a vase and a journal. Both items belonged to the husband's grandmother and were her only possessions that made it through the Holocaust before she immigrated to the US. The judge ended up ruling that the wife got possession of those items too. As soon as she got her hands on them, she smashed the vase with a hammer and burned the journal. She left the pieces of the vase and the ashes of the journal at the doorway of his one-bedroom apartment he had been financially forced to move into. I did some work for the attorney on this case. Local investment broker who's done well. Strong practice and very affluent client base. Wife owns a small shop in the local community. A pet pastime. Doesn't really turn profit. Been trying to get pregnant for a couple of years. Working with reproductive doctors and clinics. Wife finally gets pregnant. 1 in a million chance. Has the baby and it's a boy. Fast forward a couple of months. The wife has to go to the market for her shop and takes a day trip to the big city a couple of hours away. The husband prepared for this and takes the opportunity to have the baby tested for paternity. Not his. When they started at the fertility clinic, he was tested and knew he was shooting blanks. So he contacts his attorney, my boss, and we start the plan. While we're preparing the case, we have a PI follow his wife. He follows her to a few doctor visits, tennis lessons, lunch at the country club daily, and hanging out with her friends. Her friends decide to throw her a birthday party at the country club. This is our opportunity. I serve her the divorce papers, loudly asking her name and, after confirming, announce the reason for the divorce: infidelity. You are hereby ordered to appear in the blank county court, blah blah blah. Her friends are stunned. Discovery reveals that she and her friends are all cheating in the same circles. We go to court and present evidence showing the husband is not the father and request to have his name removed from the birth certificate. The judge, not wanting the child to become a ward of the state, orders her to produce a list of all the people she slept with during the reasonable window of conception. She provides the list. During the next court appearance, 10 men show up running the full gamut of personalities. 1 doctor, 1 architect, a tennis coach, 2 chefs, 1 trust fund prince, and a few others to round out the mix. 1 was actually the father of the person they really needed, but when she said John Doe, she didn't specify John Doe Jr. All were ordered to take a DNA test. Our client succeeds in getting his name removed from the birth certificate, no child support, and no alimony. Wife strikes a deal with the baby daddy for child support and support payments for a number of years. She does end up winning. It was the doctor. Part of the agreement is she has to move from the area, paid for by the doctor. NDA signed. The doctor was very rich and must protect his name and reputation. The court allowed no dad on the birth certificate because of guaranteed support for the child, a trust fund. The wife was at work when the husband closed on their house, but he took his mom and she signed the papers. Years later, they divorce and wife demands the house, but gets an eviction notice from the mom. Wife had no idea they'd been paying rent. I was approached to handle a post-divorce enforcement proceeding. The guy was owed somewhere in the neighborhood of like $5,000, which hadn't been paid in a few years and was already reduced to judgment. He reached out because he found some money she was squirreling away and he wanted the judgment enforced against it. The money was funds raised through a firehouse benefit dinner which was held for cancer treatments because she was uninsured. I declined. I had an epic client who hated his wife's guts. He was asked to pay an interim maintenance of rupees, $3,000 per month. This guy goes to the bank and gets $3,000, all in 1 rupee coins, and gives it to his wife in court. Technically, it's legal, so the wife had to sit and count all the coins in court, and then he says he wants the bag back. Technically, it's his bag. So this lady is left with 3,000 coins and no way to carry it home. This guy was an evil genius. I used to be a paralegal, but not a lawyer. I remember reading about one case that I couldn't remember the name of when I went to look for it. The parties had about $15 million in assets, and the husband had owned about 90% of the assets going into the marriage. The courts wanted to award the wife about $2 million and give the husband the rest, and the husband wanted to leave her destitute. He ended up spending all of his money to fight at every step of the way by filing frivolous motions and just generally doing whatever he could to be a jerk. After attorney fees, penalties and costs and money wasted on schemes, the total remaining assets the parties had was about $500K. The courts awarded all of it to the wife and left him completely broke. Guy wins lottery big time. Millions. Never tells his wife. Technically, half belongs to her. Taxes already taken, so he just needs to note it in tax forms, which wife always signs without looking. Divorce. Husband offers no hassle. Generous divorce settlement, which her lawyer advises her to take. He moves to a nearby town and lives normally, gradually losing touch with everyone who knows him. Then he moves again, losing touch with everyone. That's when he starts spending the dough. This one's a bit of a story, but here goes. The guy lives on his family farm all his life. His mother lives with him, but the father had already passed away. One day, his mom says he should get a wife as he starts getting a bit older himself. He finds someone online. She has a teenage daughter already, but whatever. Things move along and they're all living together on the farm. He does the farming and decides to let her handle the books. The wife then sees how much money this guy's actually got and starts spending a lot of it. Sends the daughter to private schools, starts buying expensive things, etc., etc. But she doesn't pay the farm's bills. The land was still on mortgage. He finds out because he gets a call from the bank saying that he's past due and nothing's been paid. He ends up losing the farm. He gets into a big argument with his wife. They split up. She gets him and his mother kicked out of the house, even though it was their house to begin with. So he leaves to the city. He doesn't like it. After all, he was farming out in the country all his life. So he calls up his friend, asks if he can come back to town and stay at his place. Friend says sure. He arrives at his friend's house. The friend isn't there. Instead, he finds his ex-wife and her daughter. He snapped. He took a gun from his vehicle and shot and killed them both. I've got a few stories from my husband who's an attorney. A man had been assaulting his 5-year-old daughter and the wife found out about it, left him and filed for custody. The vindictive SOB accused his wife of assaulting the daughter just so she wouldn't get custody either. The girl went to his wife's parents and suddenly the husband remembers that the wife's parents also assaulted her too. Again, all this just so that the wife wouldn't get custody. The girl ended up in foster care for a whole year while the investigations went on, and the wife and her parents were cleared. The father served time and is now allowed supervised visits. Then there was a woman who was married to a man who sold guns for a living and loved hunting more than anything. She accused him of domestic violence because she knew he would no longer be allowed to own or carry guns. Next, a woman in the middle of a divorce invited her soon-to-be ex to reconnect, seduced him, and offered him alcohol, then threw him out of the house. She called the cops and reported seeing someone swerving on the road. He was arrested, taken to jail, and lost his job because of the DUI. His job involved driving. Lastly, a man told his wife that he would give up custody of their twin daughters if she agreed not to go after spousal support or ask to split any assets. She agreed and the divorce was finalized. The day the papers were signed, he went after full custody of the twins, saying that he could take better care of them because he had a big house and she only had an apartment, and he made more money and things like that. Just to leave her with as little as possible, he told his attorney. When the judge wouldn't grant him custody because of their previous arrangement, he went after one of them and permanently split up the twins. So many stories, but generally the cases that sickened me the most went like this. Wife has baby. Husband has zero interest in child and even resents the attention that the child takes away from him. Tells wife that she is 100% responsible for this child, even financially. Wife realizes that husband is a jerk parent and that makes him a jerk partner. She would actually rather be a single parent than deal with his man-baby nonsense. Divorce petition is filed. The husband is told by his lawyer that the more time he has with his kid, the less child support he'll have to pay. The husband starts going to doctor appointments, doing stuff with the child, and, being a parent. The parties are now divorced. Husband has a 50-50 timeshare and is a doting father. All wife wanted was for husband to take an interest in the child, but she had to divorce him to get it. I had this case while working as a law clerk. The husband had a fancy job and got stationed abroad, so the wife and 2 kids moved with him. He got a really high salary, all expenses paid, while the wife was a stay-at-home mom with no income of her own. The marriage ended up failing and they moved back home to Sweden, and the wife sued for alimony, which she was entitled to by law, so she would be able to take care of the kids every other week. She hadn't worked for a number of years and had a hard time getting back into the job market, no savings, etc. Suddenly, the husband, who basically hadn't had to pay any bills for several years, claimed he was also broke. He only had around $1 million or so and was forced to spend it on an apartment in one of the most expensive parts of town so he had somewhere to live. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.